Ancient Light. A Stargate Atlantis. Babylon 5. Story. Episode 1. Ancient Light. Stargate Atlantis. Babylon 5 crossover. When Atlantis is pulled through a dimensional corridor into the Babylon 5 universe and crash lands on Epsilon 3, Sheppard's team must survive on 4% ZPM power, navigate the Shadow War, and discover why the ancients built a message into the great machine's 10-million-year-old memory. 10 sections. First appearance of the library, the dimensional boundary channel, and the returning frequency. The ZPM went from 38% to 4% in 11 seconds. McKay saw it happen and made a sound that was not a word. The specific, involuntary response of a man watching a power reading do something that his models had categorically excluded as a possibility. The sound that preceded either a solution or a very bad outcome, and that, in Rodney McKay's operational history, had, more often than he was comfortable admitting, preceded both simultaneously. "Sheppard," he said. "I see it," Sheppard said. He was at the main console of Atlantis's control room, both hands on the interface. The specific, focused quality of a pilot who had flown everything the U.S. military had built and one ancient city, and who treated all of them with the same fundamental assessment. What is it doing, and what do I need to do about it? "You don't see it," McKay said. "You see a number going down. I see what the number means, and what I see is McKay. We are being pulled," McKay said. "Something is pulling the city through a subspace corridor that I did not open and did not model and cannot currently explain, and the ZPM is draining because Atlantis is fighting it and losing, and in approximately, he ran. The calculation. 7 seconds, we are going to stop fighting it because we won't have the power to fight it anymore. And then, the city stopped fighting it. The subspace corridor took them. The transit lasted 4.3 seconds from the perspective of everyone inside Atlantis. It lasted considerably longer from the perspective of the universe they arrived in, which was not the Pegasus Galaxy, which was not the Milky Way, which was not any region of space in the database that Atlantis's navigation systems had accumulated across 10,000 years of ancient record-keeping. The city emerged from the subspace corridor at approximately 60% of standard orbital insertion velocity, too fast for a controlled approach, not fast enough for immediate structural catastrophe above a planet that the sensors identified as Class M, nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, human habitable, with a large artificial space station in high orbit that was reading as approximately 5 kilometers long and was shaped like nothing in the ancient recognition database. "What?" Sheppard said. Not a question. The specific, flat declarative of a man whose processing was running fast enough that the question had answered itself before he finished asking it, and what remained was the pure response to the answer. "Atmosphere entry in 40 seconds, Zelenka said from the secondary console, his voice carrying the specific quality of a man who had been frightened many times working on Atlantis and had developed a professional relationship with fear that involved acknowledging it precisely and then working anyway. "The city's emergency systems are compensating. Shields are at 6%. We will not burn up." A pause. "We will, however, land." "Define land," Sheppard said. "Impact is the more precise term," Zelenka said. "But Atlantis has landed before. The city's hull integrity is—" "Where are we?" McKay said. He was at his console, pulling sensor data with the frantic efficiency of a man who processed fear by working faster than it could catch him. "The star configuration is, this is not Pegasus. This is not the Milky Way. The stellar cartography doesn't match anything in the database. The subspace corridor didn't just move us across space. He stopped." "McKay," Sheppard said. "It moved us across universes," McKay said. "We're in a different universe. The fundamental constants are marginally different. 0.003% variance in the gravitational constant. 0.001% variance in the speed of light. Different universe, same basic physics. He looked at Sheppard. We're in a parallel universe, and we're about to crash land on a planet in it, and the ZPM is at 4%. How long does it take to recharge? Sheppard said. Without a ZPM manufacturing facility? Never, McKay said. With one? I'd need to find one first, and we're in a universe where I don't know if they exist. Teyla, standing at the secondary tactical station with the specific composed quality of an Athosian leader who had learned that composure was the most useful thing she could contribute in the moments when everyone else was using their composure. For other things, said, the space station. It is hailing us. Ack. Everyone looked at her. On a radio frequency, she said, not ancient, not anything in our database, but the universal translator is attempting. She paused. It is getting approximately 60% resolution. Note, it did, unquote. Put it through, Sheppard said. The voice that came through the comm had the specific quality of someone who had seen a great deal in their operational career and had developed the specific professional calm of a person who processed surprise by immediately trying to be useful to whoever had just surprised them. Unknown vessel, the voice said. I'm Captain John Sheridan, Babylon 5. You appear to be in some distress. We're reading your approach vector as uncontrolled. Can you respond? Do you need assistance? Sheppard looked at McKay. McKay looked at the ZPM reading. Ronon, standing at the back of the control room with his arms crossed, and the specific expression of a man who had been through more impossible situations than most people encountered in a lifetime and had developed a simple operational philosophy about them, said, Are we going to crash? Probably not, Zelenka said. Probably. Good enough, Ronon said. Sheppard keyed the comm. Babylon 5, this is Colonel John Sheppard, Atlantis. We are. He paused for 0.8 seconds, the specific pause of a man selecting the true answer from among the available answers based on which true answer was most immediately useful. We're having a navigation issue. We'd appreciate any landing coordinates you can provide. A pause on the Babylon 5 frequency. Then Sheridan's voice, with the specific quality of a man who had just received an answer that raised more questions than it resolved and had decided that the questions could wait until the immediate problem was addressed. Copy that, Atlantis. We're sending coordinates now. And welcome to Epsilon Eridani. Atlantis hit the upper atmosphere of Epsilon 3. What Babylon 5 saw. From the observation deck of Babylon 5, it looked like a star falling sideways. Not a meteor. Meteors fell in specific trajectories, fast and bright and brief. This was slower, larger. The specific quality of something that was not falling so much as descending with attitude. The shields around it burning atmospheric entry in patterns that suggested active rather than passive protection. The structure beneath the burning shields visible in the gaps as something that was enormous and symmetrical, and did not look like any vessel in the Babylon 5 recognition database. Ivanova was on the observation deck. She looked at it for 4.1 seconds. Then she said, Garibaldi. I see it, Garibaldi said through the comm. I've been watching it for the last 3 minutes. I've been trying to figure out what to tell you about it. Tell me what it is, Ivanova said. Unknown, Garibaldi said. It came out of a hyperspace window that is not like any hyperspace window I've seen. Different geometry, different energy signatures. It's been hailing us on standard frequencies since it emerged, and the universal translator is working on it. A pause. It says its name is Atlantis. The ship's name is Atlantis, Ivanova said. The captain's name is Sheppard, Garibaldi said. The ship's name is Atlantis. Another pause. Susan, it's not a ship. The sensor profile is, it's a city. It's an entire city. Flying. Or, it was flying. Right now, it's landing on Epsilon 3. Ivanova looked at the burning shape descending toward the planet below. She had been on Babylon 5 for long enough to have a working relationship with impossible things. The Vorlons, the Shadows, the Minbari, the specific accumulated weight of a space station that had been described as the last best hope for peace, and had, in her experience, been more of a first best hope for very complicated situations. She had developed, in the working, the specific professional relationship with the impossible that distinguished it from the merely improbable, and responded to each accordingly. This was impossible. She responded accordingly. "Get Sheridan," she said, "and someone get Ambassador Kosh. If a flying city just fell into our backyard, I want to know if the Vorlons already know what it is." Ambassador Kosh knew what it was. He did not say so immediately. The Vorlons did not operate on the timeline of immediate disclosure, had never operated on that timeline, and were not going to start because a city from another universe had landed on Epsilon III. But when Sheridan brought the sensor data to the Vorlon ambassador's quarters and asked the question directly, Kosh was quiet, for 11.3 seconds long for a human, brief for a Vorlon, the specific duration of a being, deciding how much to say rather than what to say. Then Kosh said, "They are the builders." Sheridan looked at the sensor data. In the image of the city on Epsilon III, partially submerged in water, shields still faintly active, the structure vast and symmetrical, and clearly not from anywhere in the known galaxy. "Builders of what?" Sheridan said. Kosh looked at him with the specific quality of a Vorlon communicating something that it considered obvious. "Everything," Kosh said. Then he turned away, which was the Vorlon equivalent of ending the conversation. Sheridan stood in the ambassador's quarters for a moment. Then he went to meet the people from the city that had fallen out of another universe into his. Epsilon 3 landing site. The city had come down in water. Not crashed-landed in the specific technical sense that Atlantis had been designed to land in water and had done so, the emergency systems bringing the descent rate to survivable levels in the last 400 meters, and the city settling into the ocean of Epsilon III, with the specific quality of something that had done this before and knew how. The water was different from Lantean water, slightly warmer, slightly saltier, the specific, minor variance of a different universe's ocean chemistry. McKay had noted this immediately and filed it in the category of interesting but not immediately useful, and had moved on to the category of immediately useful, which was the ZPM, 4%. Enough for life support, enough for shields at minimal power, enough for sensors and communications, not enough for the Stargate, not enough to go home. McKay was in the ZPM room, staring at the power reading with the specific quality of a man who processed impossible problems by refusing to accept that they were impossible until he had exhausted every alternative, which in his experience took time but had not yet failed to produce something. Sheppard found him there. "Sheridan's coming," Sheppard said. "Shuttle from the station. ETA 40 minutes. "I need 40 hours, McKay said. "You've got 40 minutes before first contact with whoever runs this place," Sheppard said. "What do I need to know?" McKay turned from the ZPM. "We're in a parallel universe. The physics are close enough to ours that everything works. The gate would work if we had power. The sensors work. The shields work at minimal power. The ZPM technology should be reproducible here if the raw materials are available." He paused. "The big picture is this. The ancients, our ancients, the people who built this city, may or may not have an equivalent in this universe. If they do, they may be called something different. If they don't," he paused again. "If they don't, then we are the most technologically advanced civilization this universe has ever encountered." Sheppard looked at the ZPM. "At 4%, he said. "At 4%, McKay said. "Yes," which is humbling. Sheppard looked at the ceiling, the ancient architecture above them, 10,000 years old and patient. Atlantis holding its minimal power quiet in an alien ocean on a planet it had never been meant to land on. "Teyla," he said into the comm. "Colonel," Teyla said. "What are you reading on the approaching shuttle?" Sheppard said. "Human life signs." Teyla said. Approximately 6. One energy reading I cannot identify it, is not human, and it is not in any database I have access to. She paused. It is coming anyway. Of course it is, Sheppard said. He looked at McKay. With me, he said. McKay looked at the ZPM one more time. 4%. He followed Sheppard. First contact. The shuttle landed on Atlantis's East Pier. Sheppard met with Teyla and Ronon, the specific team configuration of a first contact that might go well and might not. 2 people who were good at talking and 1 person who was very good at the alternative. McKay was at the sensor console in the control room, monitoring everything and providing commentary through the earpiece that Sheppard was wearing and had already considered removing twice. The shuttle hatch opened. John Sheridan stepped out first, mid-40s, the specific bearing of a military officer who had been in command long enough that command had become posture. Blue uniform with the Babylon 5 insignia. Behind him, Ivanova, the specific professional composure of someone who had seen too much to be surprised and was surprised anyway. Garibaldi, the security chief's specific quality of assessing threat vectors automatically and continuously. 2 Earth Force security personnel, and 1 more. The 1 more was last. It was encased in an encounter suit, the specific sealed architecture of a Vorlon, the suit that contained whatever a Vorlon actually was, the encounter suit that every species in the Babylon 5 universe recognized, and that Atlantis's sensors had flagged as the unidentified energy reading. Teyla looked at it. Vorlon looked at Teyla. Huh, McKay said in Sheppard's earpiece. The sensors are going. I don't know what to do with this reading. It's not like anything in the ancient database. It's not like anything in our database. It's a pause. It's old, Sheppard. Whatever's in that suit is very, very old. Sheppard stepped forward. Colonel John Sheppard, he said. Welcome to Atlantis. Sheridan looked at the city around him, the towers, the piers, the water, the specific vast scale of an ancient city seen from the inside. He looked at it the way Ivanova had looked at the descending city from the observation deck, the specific quality of a man whose category system was being revised in real time and who was revising it without complaint, because complaint was not useful. Captain John Sheridan, he said. He extended his hand. Sheppard shook it. I have a lot of questions. So do we, Sheppard said. Where are you from? Sheridan said. Sheppard considered the available answers. Originally, he said, Earth. Sheridan looked at him. At Teyla, not human. Clearly, not human. The specific Athosian quality of someone from the Pegasus Galaxy. At Ronon, the specific Sheridan bearing of a man who had been a runner and had survived it. At the city around them, 10,000 years old, and ancient, and utterly unlike anything in Sheridan's operational experience. Which Earth? Sheridan said. Sheppard looked at him. That, Sheppard said, is a really good question. Behind Sheridan, the Vorlon stepped forward. It looked at Sheppard. Then it looked at the city. And it said, in the specific resonant quality of a Vorlon speaking in a register that bypassed the universal translator and arrived directly as meaning, we have been waiting. McKay's voice in Sheppard's earpiece. Oh, that cannot be good. Sheppard looked at the Vorlon, at Sheridan. The city around them, ZPM, at 4%. Stargate offline. Universe wrong. Ocean alien. Everything familiar and nothing the same. Right, Sheppard said. He looked at Sheridan. You'd better come inside, he said. What the Vorlon knows. The conference room on Atlantis had been designed by people who thought in millennia. Sheridan noticed this immediately, not the scale, though the scale was significant, but the specific quality of the architecture, the way the room held light and distributed it without visible source, the way the table and the chairs had the specific ergonomic precision of furniture designed by people who understood the human form at a biological level rather than an aesthetic one. The room was 10,000 years old and felt like it had been built this morning. He sat across from Sheppard. Ivanova sat beside him, Garibaldi beside her. The two security personnel had remained on the pier at Garibaldi's instruction to the specific professional assessment of a security chief who had decided that 2 armed guards in an unknown facility would create more problems than they solved. Teyla sat across from Ivanova with the composed quality of someone conducting a first contact with the specific patience of a person who had done this before, and understood that the first 20 minutes were about establishing that both sides were willing to be in the same room, not about resolving anything. Ronon sat at the end of the table and said nothing, which was, in Sheppard's experience, one of Ronon's most useful contributions to any situation. McKay sat beside Sheppard with a datapad and the specific energy of a man who had approximately 40 things he needed to say and was physically restraining himself from saying all of them simultaneously. The Vorlon stood. It did not sit. It had not sat. It occupied the corner of the room with the specific quality of something that was present on its own terms rather than anyone else's. The encounter suit's faint bioluminescence casting the corner in a quality of light that was different from the room's ancient illumination, older, somehow, even than the 10,000-year-old city around it. Right, Sheppard said. Let's start simple. Where are we? Epsilon Eridani system, Sheridan said. Specifically, you've landed in the ocean of Epsilon 3, which is, he paused, complicated real estate. There's a great machine in the planet's core. Ancient, and I mean ancient in the general sense, not, he looked at the room around him. I'm going to guess that when you say ancient, you mean something specific. The people who built this city, Sheppard said, they called themselves the Lanteans. We call them the Ancients. They were the first evolution of humanity. They existed millions of years ago. They built the Stargate network. They eventually ascended to a higher plane of existence. He paused. Teston, however, he paused. In our universe. In your universe, Sheridan said. We're not in our universe, Sheppard said. McKay put down the restraint he had been applying to himself. The subspace corridor that pulled us here was not of our making. Something in this universe generated it. Something with access to subspace mechanics at a level that implies either very advanced technology or a very specific understanding of dimensional. The corridor, Kosh said. Everyone looked at the Vorlon. Kosh did not elaborate immediately the specific Vorlon practice of speaking in the specific quantity that the moment required, which was frequently less than the humans in the room wanted. You opened it, McKay said. He was looking at the encounter suit with the specific expression of a man whose processing had arrived at a conclusion he hadn't expected and was stress testing it before committing. The subspace corridor. Something in this universe opened it and pulled Atlantis through. That was you, wasn't it? Kosh looked at McKay. It was time, Kosh said. It was time, McKay repeated. That's not an answer. That's a fortune cookie. That's McKay, Sheppard said. A city full of people nearly died, McKay said. We have 4% ZPM power. We're in the wrong universe. We have no way home. And the reason for all of that is it was time. Rodney? Teyla said. The specific quality of Teyla saying a name not loud, not harsh, the specific tone of someone who had learned that the most effective intervention was the one that cost the least. McKay stopped. He looked at the Vorlon. Why? He said, more quietly. Why was it time? Kosh turned to face the room, fully, the specific movement of the encounter suit that indicated the Vorlon inside was addressing the collective rather than the individual. The body language of something that had been communicating with younger species for a very long time and had developed in the specific economy of beings that said important things rarely and meant them completely. The shadows return, Kosh said. The old enemy moves in the dark. The youngest of the younger races cannot stand against them alone. A pause. You have faced something like them. You carry the knowledge of it. You carry the city of the builders. Another pause. It was time. The room was quiet. Sheridan looked at Sheppard. The shadows, Sheppard said. Tell me about them. Sheridan talked for 20 minutes. He talked the way a military officer briefed, structured, prioritized, the relevant facts first and the context after. The specific professional discipline of someone who had learned that information delivered in the wrong order was frequently worse than no information. The shadows, ancient beyond human reckoning, returning to the galaxy after a 1,000-year absence. Their philosophy of evolution through conflict. Their ships that were alive. Their agents embedded in every major government. Their specific pattern of manipulating younger races into wars that served the shadow agenda. Sheppard listened with the specific quality of a man receiving a briefing that was covering familiar territory from an unfamiliar angle. The Wraith, he said, when Sheridan finished. The what? Sheridan said. In our galaxy, the Pegasus Galaxy, there's a species called the Wraith, Sheppard said. Hive-based, ancient enemy. They feed on human life force. They nearly wiped out the ancients. He paused. Not the same as your shadows. Different biology, different philosophy, different methods. But the pattern is familiar. Old enemy. Returns after a long absence. Drives conflict between younger races. He paused. We've been fighting them for 2 years. Sheridan looked at him. 2 years. Against something that nearly wiped out your ancients. We're still here, Sheppard said. Ivanova, who had been listening with the specific quality of someone building a tactical picture from incoming data, said, How? Sheppard looked at her. Stubbornness, mostly, he said. Ronon made a sound that was almost a laugh. And, McKay said, unable to stop himself, superior understanding of ancient technology, significant improvisation under pressure, and, he paused. Honestly, stubbornness is the accurate summary. Ivanova looked at Sheppard, at McKay, at Teyla and Ronon. The specific assessment of an intelligence officer evaluating a team's operational profile from their behavior in a room. She looked at Sheridan. Sheridan was looking at Kosh. Kosh was looking at Sheppard with the specific quality of a Vorlon who had made a calculation and was watching the calculation prove out. The ZPM, Sheridan said. Your power source. You said it's nearly depleted. 4%, McKay said. Enough for life support. Minimal shields, sensors, communications. Not enough for the Stargate. Not enough to... He stopped. Not enough to go back. Assuming going back is even possible, which I believe it is, but which I cannot currently demonstrate. What do you need? Sheridan said. In order of priority, McKay said, and the datapad came up. A stable power source capable of generating, at minimum, 0.4 exawatts on continuous draw. Access to a materials fabrication facility with molecular-level precision manufacturing, approximately 6 months of uninterrupted research time, and he looked at Kosh. Whatever the Vorlon knows about subspace mechanics in this universe. Because the ZPM technology works on principles that are, in our universe, unique to the ancients, and if there's no equivalent in this universe, I need to know that before I spend 6 months looking for something that isn't here. Kosh looked at McKay for 3.2 seconds. Knowledge exists, Kosh said. The builders left traces, in the great machine below, in the station above, in the places the younger races have not yet thought to look. McKay stared at the Vorlon. The great machine, McKay said, in the planet's core, the ancient construction. He looked at Sheppard. If that's actually ancient, our ancient, then it might have compatible power architecture. It might have... He was already standing. I need to get down there. It's not accessible, Garibaldi said. The planet's core. Nobody goes in without... Draal, Sheridan said. Garibaldi looked at him. Draal will want to meet them, Sheridan said. He said it with the specific quality of a man who had made a decision and was stating its implications rather than asking permission for it. What McKay found. The great machine's energy signature, read from Atlantis's sensors at 4% ZPM power, was enough to make McKay sit down. Not in distress in the specific forced stillness of a man who had been running calculations at high speed and had encountered a result that required him to stop moving so he could process it correctly. "Sheppard," he said into the comm. "Still in the conference room," Sheppard said. "What? What?" "The great machine's power architecture," McKay said. "It's not identical to ancient ZPM technology. It's not the same design language. It's not the same construction methodology. It doesn't look like anything the ancients built in our universe." He paused. "But the underlying physics, the energy principles, the specific way it interacts with subspace." Another pause. "Sheppard, it's the same physics. Different universes, different builders, different 10,000 years of independent development, and they arrived at the same underlying energy principles." End quote. He paused for longer. "The ancients in our universe and whoever built the great machine in this universe were solving the same problem, and they found the same solution. Convergent engineering," Sheppard said. "Convergent physics," McKay said. "Which means, theoretically, the great machine's power architecture is compatible with ZPM technology, not interchangeable. Not plug and play, but compatible in the way that means I can build a bridge between them." He paused. "Given time and access and Draal's cooperation." "How much time?" Sheppard said. "Less than 6 months," McKay said. "Maybe significantly less. I need to see the machine directly." Sheppard looked at Sheridan across the conference table. "We need to talk to Draal," he said. "Meanwhile, in hyperspace." The shadow vessel had been in hyperspace when Atlantis arrived. It had felt the subspace corridor open, not through sensors, through the specific biological awareness of a ship that was alive, that processed the universe through its nervous system rather than its instruments, that experienced the dimensional event as a physical sensation rather than a data point. The shadow vessel was very old. It had seen many things in its long operational existence: the rise and fall of civilizations, the specific patterns of younger races destroying themselves in the conflicts the shadows arranged for them, the long, slow satisfaction of watching chaos serve the shadow philosophy of evolution through violence. It had never felt like a subspace corridor like that one. Different geometry, different energy signatures, something from outside the known universe entering through a door that should not exist. The shadow vessel considered this for the specific duration of a living ship's consideration, not the linear processing of a machine, not the emotional deliberation of a human, but the specific organic assessment of something that had been thinking for longer than most civilizations had existed. Then it turned toward Epsilon Eridani, and it went to look. The first night. Atlantis's night cycle operated on Lantean time, a 2 8-hour day, slightly longer than Earth standard. The specific rhythm of a city built by people who had evolved on a different world and who had carried their biology with them across the stars. Sheppard sat on the East Pier at hour 23 of the first Lantean day in a new universe. With his legs over the edge and the alien ocean below him and the alien stars above him and the specific quality of a man who had processed the day's events as thoroughly as he was going to process them tonight and had arrived at the part of the processing where he just sat with the result. Sheridan found him there, not by accident, the specific intentional quality of a man who had asked Teyla where Sheppard went when he needed to think and had been told, accurately, the pier. He sat beside him. The ocean was dark. The station above Babylon 5 was visible as a moving point of light in the alien sky, its running lights creating the specific orbital brightness of a large structure, catching the star's reflection. They sat in silence for a reasonable interval. "The Vorlon," Sheppard said. "Kosh, how long have you been working with him?" "Working with is generous," Sheridan said. "He speaks in riddles. He withholds information until he decides you're ready for it. And he periodically says something that sounds meaningless and turns out to be the most important thing anyone has said in a year. He paused. So, 2 years. The ancients, Sheppard said. In our universe, they ascended, left the physical plane. They're present, sometimes. They intervene occasionally. Mostly, they watch. He paused. Does that sound familiar? Sheridan looked at the station above them. More than I'm comfortable with, he said. The Vorlons, Sheppard said. The Vorlons, Sheridan said. Yes. They sat with that for a moment, the specific weight of 2 men who had each been dealing with ancient, incomprehensible beings that watched and withheld and intervened on their own schedule and called it wisdom. Are they the same? Sheppard said. Sheridan looked at the stars. I don't know, he said. Kosh said, your people were the builders. If the ancients built the Vorlons, or built with them, or if the Vorlons are ancients. He paused. I don't know. But I think that's the right question. Sheppard looked at the station, at the stars, at the alien ocean below him, dark and slightly wrong in its chemistry, and completely real. My city, he said. Atlantis. It's not just a city. It's the ancients. Put everything they knew into this place. 10,000 years of knowledge. Medical technology, energy architecture, weapons, history. He paused. If the Vorlons are connected to the ancients, if the Great Machine is connected to what built the ZPMs, then what we have here is not just a stranded city. It's a resource, Sheridan said. In the middle of a war. Yes, Sheppard said. The shadows will come for it, Sheridan said. When they find out it's here. How long do we have? Sheppard said. Not long, Sheridan said. They have agents everywhere. Someone will have seen Atlantis arrive. Someone will have reported it. He paused. The question isn't whether they come. It's whether we're ready when they do. Sheppard looked at the ZPM reading on his data pad. 4%. He looked at the station above. At the city behind him, 10,000 years old. Minimal power. Alien ocean. Wrong universe. McKay, he said into the comm. Still working, McKay said. The specific sound of a man who had not stopped since the conference room and was not going to stop. How long to get to the Great Machine? Sheppard said. Sheridan said Draal will see us tomorrow. McKay said, once I'm in days, maybe. If the architecture is as compatible as the sensor data suggests. A pause. Why? We're going to need power, Sheppard said. Sooner than 6 months. A pause from McKay, the specific processing pause of a man recalculating his timeline against a new constraint. How soon? McKay said. Sheppard looked at Sheridan. Sheridan looked at the stars. Soon, Sheppard said. On the pier behind them, Atlantis held its minimal power quiet in the alien ocean shields at 6%, ZPM at 4%. The city that the ancients had built to last 10,000 years lasting still. In a universe it had not been built for. In a war it had not been brought here to avoid. In hyperspace, the shadow vessel turned toward Epsilon Eridani. It was coming. The city held. The ZPM read 4%. McKay was already working. Draal was not what McKay expected. This was, McKay reflected, becoming a pattern in his life. The universe consistently producing entities that his models had not adequately prepared him for. The specific recurring experience of a man whose models were very good and whose universe was better. The ancients had not prepared him for the Wraith. The Wraith had not prepared him for Atlantis. Atlantis had not prepared him for a parallel universe. And nothing had prepared him for a Minbari elder who had voluntarily merged with a planetary machine and who greeted McKay's arrival in the Great Machine's interface chamber with the specific quality of someone who had been waiting for this conversation for a very long time and was, now that it had arrived, genuinely delighted. You are the one who understands the city, Draal said. Not a question. His voice had the resonant quality of something speaking through more than one system simultaneously, the man and the machine together. The specific, merged quality of a consciousness that had expanded to fill a planet-sized intelligence and had retained, in the expansion, the warmth of the person it had been before. "I'm the one who keeps it running, yes," McKay said, "which is more complicated than it sounds because it's 10,000 years old and in a universe it wasn't built for and currently running on 4% power." "Yes?" Draal said. "I know." He looked at McKay with the specific quality of eyes that were also sensors, that were reading McKay through the machine's instrument suite as well as through biological vision. "I have been watching since the city arrived. The power architecture is familiar to me now, though it was not when I first merged with the machine." He paused. "The builders left traces here. In the machine's deepest memory, records of their visit 10 million years ago, when they came to this system and found what was already here and recognized it." McKay stopped moving. 10 million years ago, he said. "Yes?" Draal said. "The ancients," McKay said. "Our ancients were here, in this universe, 10 million years ago." "Not your ancients precisely," Draal said. "The machine's memory does not make the distinction between universes the way you do to the machine, which exists partially in subspace and partially in normal space. The dimensional boundary between universes is a navigational feature rather than an absolute barrier. What the machine remembers is beings of great age and great knowledge who came to this system, who recognized the machine, who left a message in its memory, and who departed." He paused. "The message has been waiting. For who?" McKay said. Draal looked at him. "For whoever came through the corridor," he said. "The message specifies the builder's children arriving through a door that should not exist, carrying the city in a time of darkness." He paused. "You are the builder's children. This is a time of darkness. The corridor brought you." He paused again. "The message is for you, Dr. McKay." McKay looked at Sheppard. Sheppard was standing at the chamber entrance he had insisted on coming. The specific O'Neill-shaped habit that Sheppard had developed of not letting his scientist go into ancient alien machinery alone, regardless of how many times the scientist pointed out that he was perfectly capable. He was looking at Draal with the measured expression of a man receiving information that was significant and filing it correctly. "What does the message say?" Sheppard said. Draal smiled, the specific quality of a being who had merged with a planetary intelligence and had retained the capacity for warmth in the merging. "It says," Draal said, "the power you need is not stored, it is generated. Look to the place between spaces. The machine knows the way." The place between spaces took McKay 40 minutes to identify. Not because the concept was obscure once Draal had shown him the machine's deep memory records. The specific ancient notation system became readable in the way that ancient notation always became readable to McKay, which was quickly and completely, and with the specific satisfaction of a mind encountering a language it had been learning for 2 years and finding it sufficient. The records were clear. The notation was precise. The concept they described was staggering. "Zero-point energy," McKay said. He was at a console in the machine's interface chamber, the machine's instrument suite, giving him access to sensor data that made Atlantis's 4% sensor suite look like a flashlight pointed at the sun. In our universe, ZPMs work by extracting vacuum energy from a self-contained pocket of subspace. You tap the zero-point energy of a contained region and convert it to power. The pocket depletes over time. That's why ZPMs run out." He paused. "The machine's power architecture doesn't use a contained pocket. It taps the zero-point energy of the dimensional boundary itself, the barrier between universes, which is not a contained region and does not deplete because the dimensional boundary is not a resource that gets consumed. It's a condition. It's always there." "Unlimited power," Sheppard said. "Not unlimited," McKay said, with the specific reflexive precision of a physicist who could not let that pass. "Effectively unlimited for any practical application we would ever encounter. The dimensional boundary's energy density is us. He looked at the numbers. Yes, effectively unlimited. Can you tap it? Sheppard said. The machine already does, McKay said. That's how it's been running, for however long it's been running. The architecture is different from ZPM technology, but the underlying physics are the same, which I already told you from the sensor data, which means I can build a bridge between ZPM architecture and the machine's dimensional boundary tap. Not immediately, not easily, but the theoretical framework is complete. I know what needs to be built. I know the materials. I know the methodology. He looked up. Sheppard, I can recharge the ZPM, not from a contained subspace pocket from the dimensional boundary, continuously, permanently. The chamber was quiet. How long? Sheppard said. To build the interface hardware? McKay said. With the machine's fabrication systems, which Draal has offered access to, and which are, he looked at the fabrication suite readings, significantly more capable than anything we have on Atlantis. He ran the calculation. 72 hours. Sheppard looked at Draal. Draal looked at McKay with a specific quality of a being who had been waiting for this conversation for a very long time and was watching it arrive exactly as the machine's memory had suggested it would. The fabrication systems are yours, Draal said. Use what you need. Above Epsilon 3, the shadow vessel dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system at 0340 station time. It did not announce itself. Shadow vessels did not announce themselves, the specific operational philosophy of a species that had been conducting war through proxies and agents for thousands of years, and that considered direct engagement a tool of last resort, a blunt instrument deployed only when the subtler instruments had been exhausted, or when the situation offered an opportunity that the blunt instrument was uniquely positioned to exploit. The shadow vessel assessed the situation. The city on Epsilon III's ocean enormous, ancient in the genuine sense. The specific energy signature of a technology the shadows had not encountered before, but whose underlying physics their instruments could read, and whose implications they could calculate. The power reading was minimal. 4% of the city's evident capacity. Vulnerable. The station in orbit Babylon 5. Familiar. A known quantity in the Shadow's operational picture. Sheridan's station. The gathering point for the resistance that the Shadows had been working to prevent and that had been forming anyway. The specific frustration of a species that controlled the board and kept finding that the pieces moved. And now this. A city from outside the known universe, parked in Sheridan's backyard, with ancient technology and minimal power and the specific energy signature of something whose full capacity the Shadows had not modeled for because they had not known it existed. The shadow vessel communicated with its kind, the specific instantaneous communication of a species that did not use radio or subspace relays, but something older, something that operated at the level of the dimensional boundary itself, the specific channel that the machine's deep sensors had been detecting as background noise for 10 million years, and that McKay, at this moment, was looking at on the machine's instrument suite and filing under anomalous signal to investigate later. The response from the Shadow Network was immediate. Take the city before the power is restored. The Shadow vessel began moving toward Epsilon 3. Babylon 5, C and C. Ivanova saw it first. Not because her instruments were better than the Shadow vessel's stealth systems, they weren't. The Shadow's cloaking technology exceeded Babylon 5's detection capability by a significant margin, and she was not seeing the vessel itself. She was seeing its effect on the hyperspace boundary, the specific gravitational signature of a large mass moving through normal space at the edge of sensor range, the shadow of a shadow. Contact, she said, bearing 227, range approximately 40,000 kilometers. I can't get a clean reading. The stealth systems are good, but the gravitational signature is large. She paused. Very large. Garibaldi was already at his station. Shadow vessel? The signature is consistent, Ivanova said. It's moving toward Epsilon 3. Garibaldi opened the comm to Sheridan. "Captain, we've got a problem." Sheridan's voice immediately awoke the specific quality of a man who slept light and answered fast. "How big?" "Shadow vessel big," Garibaldi said. "Moving toward Atlantis. ETA, approximately 20 minutes at current speed." A pause. "Get Sheppard," Sheridan said. "The Great Machine Interface Chamber." The comm came through on the Babylon 5 frequency at 0347. Sheppard heard it and was already moving before Sheridan finished the sentence. The specific reflex of a man for whom shadow vessel, 20 minutes translated immediately and completely into a single operational priority. "McKay," he said. "I heard," McKay said. He was not moving. He was at the console, hands moving across the interface with the frantic precision of a man who was doing the most important calculation of his professional life and was not going to stop doing it because of an imminent threat, because stopping was exactly what the imminent threat wanted. 20 minutes is not enough time to complete the interface hardware. "How much can you do in 20 minutes?" Sheppard said. "Enough to get us from 4% to maybe 30, McKay said. "If I cut every corner I believe in cutting, and several I don't." He paused. 30% is shields, weapons, not full power, but functional. "Do it," Sheppard said. "Already doing it," McKay said. Sheppard looked at Draal. "The Great Machine, can it assist in the defense of the city?" Draal was quiet for 2.1 seconds, the specific quality of a merged consciousness consulting a planetary intelligence. "The machine's weapons systems are significant," Draal said. "They have not been used in 10 million years, but they are intact." He paused. "And I confess, the specific quality of a Minbari elder who had merged with a planetary intelligence and retained a sense of humor in the merging, I have been somewhat curious to see what they do." Sheppard looked at him. "Me too," he said. Atlantis control room. Teyla had the city on full alert by the time Sheppard's jumper cleared the Great Machine's access shaft. Not because Sheppard had told her, because Teyla had been monitoring the Babylon 5 frequency as a matter of standard practice since they arrived, and she had heard Ivanova's contact report, and she had done what she always did when there was a threat. She had assessed it, she had determined the correct response, and she had implemented the correct response. And by the time Sheppard landed on the pier, she had the city's defensive systems at standby, the jumper bay prepped, and Ronon at the primary tactical console looking at the shadow vessel's approach vector with the specific, focused expression of a man who had been waiting for something to fight since they arrived. "Status," Sheppard said, coming through the control room door at a run. "Shadow vessel, bearing 227, range 28,000 kilometers, ETA 16 minutes. Teyla said. McKay's power feed is, she looked at the ZPM reading, increasing, 7%, 9%, 19, 9%. He said 30 by the time it arrives, Sheppard said. What do we have at 30? Shields at 40% capacity, Zelenka said from the secondary console. The specific rapid-fire quality of a man reading numbers and translating them to operational meaning without pause. Drone weapons approximately 60 operational. The rest require power levels we don't have yet. The chair. He paused. The chair requires a minimum of 25% ZPM to activate. At 30%, Colonel Sheppard can fly the city's full drone complement. The chair, Sheppard said. The ancient weapons chair the interface that connected a person with the ancient gene directly to Atlantis's weapons systems, the most powerful single combat system the ancients had built into the city. The thing that required a very specific gene and a very specific willingness to sit in a chair that put a war city's firepower directly into your nervous system. Sheppard had the gene. He had sat in the chair before. He sat in it now. 15 minutes. The ZPM climbed. McKay's voice on the comm continuous. The specific running commentary of a man doing complex work under time pressure and narrating it not for his audience, but for himself. The externalized processing of a mind that worked better when it talked. Interface hardware at 60%. The fabrication system is faster than anything we have. I want one of these on Atlantis permanently. The power feed is stabilizing at the dimensional boundary tap. The conversion rate is, yes, that's good. That's what I need. 11%. 14%. 18%. On the chair, Sheppard felt the city wake up around him, the specific, ancient experience of the chair interface, the city's consciousness extending into his, the specific, vast quality of being connected to something that thought in millennia and had just been told it was needed. Atlantis knew there was a threat. Atlantis had been built by people who had fought the Wraith for 10,000 years and had not forgotten how. 22%. 25%. The drone complement came online. Sheppard felt 60 drones like fingers, the specific, precise awareness of the chair interface. Each drone a distinct point in his tactical consciousness. Ready, aimed, waiting. Shadow vessel is decelerating. Ivanova's voice on the comm. It's taking up a position 8,000 kilometers out. It's not attacking. It's assessing. It saw the power reading go up, Garibaldi said. It came in expecting 4%, and it's reading. What is it reading now? 28%, Zelenka said. And climbing. The shadow vessel held its position. 8,000 kilometers. Assessing. McKay, Sheppard said. Through the chair interface, his voice had the specific quality of someone speaking from a long-distance present but extended. The specific quality of a mind occupying more space than a human mind normally occupied. 30%, McKay said. Done. The interface is holding. The dimensional boundary tap is stable. A pause. The ZPM is no longer depleting. It is charging. Slowly, but charging. Another pause. Longer. The specific quality of a man looking at a number he had calculated theoretically and was seeing empirically for the first time. Sheppard. It's going to keep climbing. The dimensional boundary tap doesn't deplete. The ZPM is going to reach 100%, and it's going to stay there. He paused. We have permanent power. We have a permanently powered ZPM. The control room was silent for 1.3 seconds. Then Zelenka made a sound that was not a word. Then Teyla said, with the specific, composed quality that made the composition more powerful than excited, "Then let us make use of it." The ZPM read 31%. 32. The shadow vessel was still holding at 8,000 kilometers. Still assessing. On the chair, Sheppard felt 60 drones and the city's full sensor suite and the specific growing power of a ZPM climbing toward capacity, and he looked at the shadow vessel's position in the city's tactical consciousness. And he made the specific decision of a man who had been fighting ancient enemies for 2 years and had learned one absolute lesson about them. You did not wait for them to decide. You made the decision for them. Ivanova, he said into the comm. Sheppard, Ivanova said. Tell the shadow vessel, Sheppard said, that it has 30 seconds to leave this system. A pause. And if it doesn't, Ivanova said, then it finds out what 60 ancient drones do to a shadow vessel, Sheppard said. And so do we. The ZPM read 34%. The city hummed around him. Atlantis, 10,000 years old, wrong universe, alien ocean, 34% and climbing, was ready. The shadow vessel did not leave. This was not surprising. The shadows had been operating in this galaxy for longer than most civilizations had existed. And the specific thing that 10,000 years of dominance produced in a species was the particular quality of confidence that did not process ultimatums as genuine. Ultimatums, in the shadow operational model, were what younger races issued when they were frightened and wanted to appear otherwise. The correct response to an ultimatum from a younger race was to demonstrate precisely and efficiently why the ultimatum was not a variable the shadows needed to account for. The shadow vessel began moving toward Epsilon 3. Sheppard felt it through the chair, not through instruments, through the specific direct awareness of the ancient interface, the city's consciousness registering the threat vector with the same precision it registered everything. The shadow vessel's approach speed. Its weapon systems coming online, the specific energy signature of a living ship preparing to fight, the biological warmth of something that was a weapon and knew it. 8,000 kilometers. 6,000. Sheppard, Ivanova said on the comm. It's not stopping. I know, Sheppard said. 4,000 kilometers. The ZPM read 38%. Sheppard launched the drones. Not 60. 20. The specific economy of a man who had been flying military aircraft since his early 20s and who had learned, in the flying, that you used what the situation required and you kept the rest in reserve because the situation always had a second phase, and the second phase was where people who had used everything in the first phase ran into problems. 20 drones at 4,000 kilometers. The shadow vessel's response was immediate. The specific biological agility of a living ship, the evasive movement of something that did not have the mechanical constraints of a constructed vessel, that could flex and alter its profile in ways that made targeting solutions based on rigid body physics calculations only partially correct. 17 of the 20 drones connected. The shadow vessel screamed. Not metaphorically, the specific biological distress signal of a living ship taking significant damage, a sound that the Babylon 5 crew had heard before, and that still produced the specific involuntary physical response in every human who heard it, of wanting to be somewhere else. It was not destroyed. Shadow vessels were not destroyed easily, the specific resilience of a living ship, the biological repair systems that made them more like organisms than machines, the capacity to absorb damage and continue functioning at reduced capacity. But it hurt. 3,000 kilometers. 2,500. It's still coming, Ronon said from the tactical console. The specific, flat quality of a man reporting a fact rather than expressing surprise. I know, Sheppard said. He launched 20 more. In the great machine's interface chamber, Draal felt the drones launch through the machine's sensor suite, felt them the way the machine felt everything, as extensions of his expanded consciousness, bright points of directed energy moving through the space above Epsilon 3 with the specific purposeful quality of weapons that knew what they were for. He also felt the shadow vessel. He had felt shadow vessels before in the machine's long memory, in the records of 10 million years of observation. The shadows were not unknown to the great machine. They were known the way geological features were known, ancient, consistent, part of the landscape of the galaxy's deep history. The machine had never engaged them. Its weapon systems, dormant for 10 million years, had been maintained because the machine maintained everything, because the entity or entities that had built it had understood that maintenance was the difference between a tool and a ruin. Draal consulted the machine. The machine was ready. Sheppard, Draal said into the comm. The machine would like to contribute. The great machine's weapons were not drones. They were not missiles. They were not energy beams in the conventional sense, not the directed particle weapons of Earth Force, not the fusion lances of the Minbari, not the mass drivers of the less restrained members of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds. They were dimensional, the specific weapons architecture of a technology that operated at the boundary between normal space and subspace, that interacted with the dimensional membrane in ways that conventional weapons did not. The specific weapons of builders who had understood that the most efficient way to damage a target was not to apply energy to its surface, but to interact with the subspace topology that its matter occupied. The great machine fired for the first time in 10 million years. The effect on the shadow vessel was not what a conventional weapon produced, not an explosion, not a structural breach, not the specific kinetic drama of a large mass being disrupted by energy. The effect was quieter and more total. The shadow vessel's connection to its own subspace communications, the specific channel through which it contacted its kind, through which it received instructions, through which it maintained its identity as part of the shadow network, was severed. Not damaged. Severed. The living ship was still intact, still physically present, still dangerous in the specific way of a large biological weapons system with its drives and its physical weapons online. But it was alone. For a species that communicated through a network that was as fundamental to their identity as their biology, alone was not a tactical state. It was an existential one. The shadow vessel stopped moving. "What did you do?" Garibaldi said. He was watching the sensor readings in Babylon 5's C&C with the specific quality of a man who had been in security long enough to appreciate efficient incapacitation and was seeing a masterclass in it. The machine severed its subspace communication architecture. Draal said through the comm, the warmth in his voice carrying the specific quality of a being who had spent 10 million years curious about what his weapons did and had just found out. It cannot contact the shadow network. It cannot receive orders. It cannot confirm its own status to its kind. A pause. It is, in the shadow's terms, effectively dead. Present, but unreachable. The worst condition their philosophy allows for. "Will they send another one?" Sheridan said. "Yes," Draal said, "when this one fails to report. But the failure to report will itself be information. They will know that something here severed the connection, and they will need to calculate what that means before they act." He paused. "We have bought time." "How much?" Sheridan said. "Enough," Draal said, "for what needs to be done." "The chair." Sheppard came out of the interface at 0522. The ZPM read 47% and climbed the dimensional boundary tap, running its steady continuous feed, the power curve smooth and consistent. McKay's interface hardware doing exactly what McKay had calculated it would do. By morning, it would be at 60. By the following morning, 80. The curve was clear. He sat in the control room with his back against the wall below the main console and his eyes closed, and the specific quality of a man who had just been connected to a 10,000-year-old city's combat consciousness for 47 minutes and was reintegrating with the normal dimensions of his own mind. Teyla sat beside him, not speaking the specific quality of Teyla's presence, the specific thing she offered that was not advice and not assessment, and not the useful tactical thinking she was also capable of, just a present. The specific value of someone who understood that sometimes what was needed was not a contribution but a witness. After 4 minutes, Sheppard said, "The chair is different here." "Different how?" Teyla said. "In our galaxy, the chair interfaced with Atlantis's weapons and the city's basic systems," Sheppard said. "Here," he paused, "here, the city is more present. Like it's been thinking, while the power was low. Like it had things to say and was waiting for enough power to say them." He paused. "I felt the city's memory. Not all of it. I bud. Fragments. The ancients who lived here. The specific." He stopped. "What did you feel?" Teyla said. Sheppard was quiet for 3.1 seconds. "They came here on purpose," he said. "The ancients, the ones who built this city. They didn't always live in Pegasus. They came from somewhere else. Something drove them out. And when they left Pegasus, when they abandoned Atlantis and went back to Earth, it wasn't defeated." He paused. "They left something here, intentionally. The city was meant to be found. The city was meant to come back." He looked at Teyla. "I don't think we were pulled here by accident." Teyla looked at him. "Kosh said it was time," she said. "Yeah," Sheppard said. "I think the ancients said it first." He looked at the ceiling, the ancient architecture above him, 10,000 years of intention. "I think the ancients and the Vorlons have been running the same play for a very long time, and I think we just became part of it. Kosh. The Vorlon found Sheppard on the East Pier at 0600. Not surprising, the specific pattern of Kosh's movements on Atlantis in the first day had already established that the Vorlon went where the information was, that the encounter suit's bioluminescence had been visible on 3 separate piers and in 2 corridors, and once, briefly, in the ZPM room where McKay had been working and had not noticed because McKay did not notice things that were not directly relevant to the problem he was solving. Sheppard looked at the encounter suit. The encounter suit looked at Sheppard. "The chair," Sheppard said. "I felt the city's memory. Fragments." He paused. "The ancients came here, to this universe, on purpose. They knew about the shadows. They knew about the machine. They left the message in the machine's memory." He paused. "They were working with the Vorlons." Kosh was still for 4.3 seconds. Then, "Yes." "For how long?" Sheppard said. "Since the beginning," Kosh said. Sheppard looked at the alien ocean. "Which beginning?" he said. "All of them," Kosh said. The specific Vorlon answer, the answer that was true and complete, and that a human mind received as insufficient because human minds wanted specificity, and Vorlons operated at a level where specificity was a reduction rather than a clarification. Sheppard had been dealing with the ancients long enough to understand this quality. He did not like it. He had learned to work with it. "The shadows," he said. "The city, the machine, the corridor that brought us here." He paused. "What is the play? What are the ancients? What are the Vorlons? What is the actual objective?" Kosh turned to face the ocean. The bioluminescence in the encounter suit shifted the specific color change that the Babylon 5 crew had learned to read as the Vorlon equivalent of a considered breath, the pause before something important. "The shadows believe that strength comes through conflict," Kosh said. "They seed war between younger races to force evolution through violence. They have done this for 1,000,000 years." A pause. "We believed that strength comes through guidance. We have shepherded younger races toward wisdom for 1,000,000 years." Another pause. "We were both wrong." Sheppard looked at the encounter suit. "Both wrong," he said. "The younger races do not need shepherds," Kosh said. "They do not need conflict. They need what you have, what your city carries. The knowledge of people who faced the darkness and did not become it." A pause. "The ancients faced the wraith for 10,000 years and built medicine instead of only weapons. They faced extinction and left libraries instead of only fortresses." Another pause. "This is what the shadows cannot model. This is what we Vorlons forgot." The ocean was quiet. The alien sun was beginning its rise, the specific quality of dawn on a world that was not Lantia and not Earth, and that was beautiful anyway. The light coming over the water with the specific indifference of a star that rose every morning, regardless of what the people on the planet below were working out. "You brought us here," Sheppard said. "Not just to fight the shadows." "No," Kosh said. "To show them something," Sheppard said. "The younger races. What the ancients were, what they built." He paused. "What we carry." "Yes," Kosh said. Sheppard looked at the city behind him. Atlantis, ZPM, climbing toward full power, 50% and rising. The drones recharged and ready. The chair waiting. The 10,000 years of ancient knowledge in the city's memory. The medical technology and the energy architecture and the history and the specific accumulated weight of a civilization that had faced its darkness and built libraries. "McKay's not going to like being used as a teaching moment," Sheppard said. The encounter suit's bioluminescence shifted again the specific quality of a Vorlon who had spent 1,000,000 years guiding younger races and had, in the process, developed the specific thing that very long exposure to humans produced in ancient beings. A sense of humor. "No," Kosh said. "He will not." 0800. The conference room. McKay arrived at the conference room at 0800 with 3 data pads, no sleep, and the specific energy of a man running on the specific fuel of discovery, the state that bypassed exhaustion completely because the thing being discovered was more interesting than the exhaustion was uncomfortable. He put the data pads on the table. He looked at Sheppard, at Sheridan, at Teyla and Ronon, and Ivanova and Garibaldi, at Kosh in the corner. Right, he said. The ZPM is at 52% and climbing. Full power in approximately 36 hours. The dimensional boundary tap is stable and permanent. I cannot stress this enough. Permanent. And the interface hardware is holding at 99.7% efficiency. The 0.3% variance is a rounding artifact and will stabilize. He took a breath. The shadow vessel is still in the system, isolated, non-communicating. It represents a physical threat, but not a network threat. We have time. He took another breath. The Great Machines fabrication systems are the most capable I have ever worked with, and I would like to formally request that we negotiate permanent access. Draal's voice through the comm. Granted. Thank you, McKay said. He sat down. He looked at the room. Now, someone tell me what the Vorlons want with us. Because Kosh has been in the ZPM room twice, and I don't think it was for the power readings. Sheppard looked at Kosh. Kosh looked at McKay. You are going to help us end a war, Kosh said. McKay looked at Sheppard. Which war? McKay said. All of them, Sheppard said. McKay absorbed this. Right, he said. He picked up his datapad. I'm going to need more coffee, he said. The ZPM read 53%. The city hummed. The war was old. The city was older. The knowledge was still older. 53% and climbing. The work begun. The ancient database was 10,847 terabytes. McKay had known this number for 2 years, had lived with it, had navigated it, had built search algorithms to find specific nodes within it, and had spent significant portions of his professional life frustrated by the specific quality of a database built by people who organized information according to principles that were not immediately intuitive to humans, and that became intuitive only after extended exposure, and even then, only partially. He opened it to Sheridan's team at 0900. Not all of it. The specific professional caution of a man who understood that 10,847 terabytes of ancient knowledge dropped without context on people who had no framework for it would produce noise rather than signal. He opened the sections that were immediately relevant: medical technology, energy architecture, the historical record of the Lantean Wraith War. The specific accumulated knowledge of a civilization that had spent 10,000 years in Pegasus, fighting something that wanted to eat them, and had, in the fighting, developed medical science that was approximately 10,000 years ahead of anything in the Babylon 5 universe. Ivanova sat at the database terminal for 40 minutes before she said anything. When she said something, it was quiet. This is a treatment for the Drafa plague, she said. McKay looked up from his own console. What? The Drafa plague, Ivanova said. It killed the Markab, an entire species, billions of people in less than a year. We couldn't stop it. Nobody could stop it. She was looking at the database entry with the specific quality of someone reading something that was arriving too late to help the people it could have helped, and that was arriving anyway. This treatment, the ancient antiviral architecture, it's compatible with Markab biology. It would have worked. She paused. If we'd had this a year ago. The room was quiet. Sheppard looked at the database entry. At Ivanova. The Markab are gone? He said. All of them, Ivanova said. McKay looked at the entry. At the treatment protocol. At the specific quality of information that had existed in the ancient database for 10,000 years, and that had been 300 light-years and 1 universe away from the people who needed it. He did not say anything for 4.1 seconds. Then, the database has treatments for 4,847 distinct pathogenic conditions, he said. Not all of them will be directly applicable to species in this universe. The biological variance across universes introduces compatibility questions that will require case-by-case analysis. But the underlying antiviral architecture, the ancient approach to pathogen suppression, is based on principles that are biologically universal. He paused. It will work here. Most of it will work here. Sheridan looked at the database, at McKay, at Sheppard. How much of this, Sheridan said carefully, is medical? Approximately 340 terabytes of the directly accessible database, McKay said. The rest is engineering, history, physics, xenobiology, materials, science, weapons development, philosophy. He paused. The ancients were comprehensive. Sheridan looked at the 340 terabytes number. He had been fighting the Shadow War for 2 years. He had watched species destroyed, stations bombed, planets burned, the specific accumulated cost of a war that the Shadows seeded through proxies and that the younger races paid in full. He had been building a coalition against the darkness with the specific, determined optimism of a man who believed the darkness was defeatable if enough people decided to defeat it. He had never had 340 terabytes of ancient medical knowledge. Garibaldi, he said. Already thinking about distribution infrastructure, Garibaldi said. Ronon and Garibaldi. They found each other in the East Corridor at 1100. Not by arrangement, the specific coincidence of two people with similar operational instincts, independently choosing to walk the city's perimeter for threat assessment purposes and encountering each other at the midpoint. Garibaldi looked at Ronon. Ronon looked at Garibaldi. The specific mutual assessment of two security professionals evaluating each other, not hostile, not friendly. The specific professional neutrality of people whose job was to assess threat profiles and who were applying the same methodology to each other that they applied to everything. Garibaldi had been chief of security on Babylon 5 for 4 years. He had survived the Shadows, the Night Watch, 2 assassination attempts, and a period of his life he didn't discuss in casual conversation. He was compact, practical, and had the specific quality of a man who trusted his instincts because his instincts had been correct often enough to earn the trust. Ronon had been a runner for 7 years. He had survived the Wraith, the Genii, and every other threat the Pegasus Galaxy had produced, alone, with a single weapon and the specific operational philosophy that the best response to pursuit was to run toward it rather than away from it until the pursuit became the pursued. They walked in silence for approximately 40 meters. Then Garibaldi said, "The big gun on your hip, what does it do?" "Stuns or kills," Ronon said, "depending on the setting." "How's the accuracy?" Garibaldi said. "Good," Ronon said. Garibaldi nodded. The shadow vessel, still in the system, still isolated. But it's a physical threat. If it decides to stop being passive and start being active, we need response time. He paused. I'm thinking of 2-person perimeter teams on the outer piers, rotating 4-hour shifts. Ronon looked at him. I was thinking the same thing, Ronon said. Garibaldi looked at him. You want the north perimeter or the south? Garibaldi said. North, Ronon said. South it is, Garibaldi said. They walked in silence for another 30 meters. Then Ronon said, the stun setting on your PPG, effective range? About 15 meters against a standard target, Garibaldi said. Less against shadows. What works against shadows? Ronon said. Bright light, Garibaldi said. Focused. They don't like light. He paused. White starships use a specific frequency. Also, the Vorlon's Kosh has a thing he does. And apparently 60 ancient drones, which I watched at 0400 this morning and which was educational. Ronon thought about this. The city has lights, he said. Garibaldi looked at him. External lighting array. Ronon said. The city's outer hull. McKay said it was decorative, but the power is there now. He paused. If the shadow vessel gets close enough. Garibaldi was already on the comm. McKay. Busy, McKay said. The city's external lighting array, Garibaldi said. Can it be reconfigured to emit focused light at a frequency that's effective against shadow vessels? A pause. The specific processing pause of McKay receiving an unexpected question and running it against the ancient database. That is, McKay said, a genuinely good idea. Give me 20 minutes. Garibaldi looked at Ronon. Ronon looked at Garibaldi. The professional neutrality had resolved into something else, the specific quality of two security professionals who had identified each other as useful. North perimeter, Garibaldi said. You said. Yeah, Ronon said. They went in opposite directions. Ivanova and Teyla. Teyla found Ivanova in the database room at 1300. Ivanova had not left since 0900. She had 4 active search threads running the Drafa plague treatment, had been the first discovery, and had not been the last. The ancient database, once she had the search methodology McKay had explained, was producing results with the specific quality of a library that had been waiting for someone to ask the right questions. She looked up when Teyla entered. You have been here for 4 hours, Teyla said. Not a criticism, but the specific observation of someone checking on a person who had been still for a long time. The database, Ivanova said. I keep finding things. She looked at the screen. There's a treatment for the disease that's been affecting the Narn population since the Centauri bombardment. There's an engineering solution for the damage to Narn's biosphere, a terraforming protocol the ancients developed for a similar situation in their own history. She paused. There's a record of first contact protocols for 37 species that are currently listed as hostile in our database, and in every case, the ancient record shows the hostility was the result of a project. Shadow-influenced misunderstanding that was engineered deliberately. She looked at Teyla. The shadows have been doing this for a very long time, arranging for species to distrust each other, planting misunderstandings that become wars. Teyla sat down. The Wraith did something similar, Teyla said. Not the same mechanism, the Wraith were less subtle, but the effect was comparable. The people of Pegasus spent 10,000 years unable to build alliances that lasted because the Wraith destroyed any civilization that grew strong enough to threaten them. She paused. We spent 2 years trying to build what the Wraith spent 10,000 years preventing. Ivanova looked at her. Did you succeed? Teyla was quiet for 1.3 seconds, the specific quality of an honest person considering an honest answer. We were building toward it, she said. When the corridor took us, she paused. The people we left behind, they are still there, still fighting. She looked at the database, the treatments in here, the protocols. If we could get them home. When you get home, Ivanova said. Teyla looked at her. McKay said, the ZPM will reach full power in 36 hours, Ivanova said. He said the Stargate would work at full power, he said. She paused. End quote. He said going home was a matter of engineering, not physics, that the corridor could be reopened if the dimensional boundary tap was providing sufficient power. She looked at Teyla. You're going home. The question is, just when? Teyla absorbed this. She looked at the database, at the 340 terabytes of ancient medical knowledge, at the treatments and protocols and the accumulated knowledge of a civilization that had built libraries rather than only fortresses. Not yet, Teyla said quietly. Ivanova looked at her. There is work to be done here first, Teyla said. The Shadow War, the things the database contains that your people need. She paused. We did not come here by accident. Colonel Sheppard believes that. I believe it. She looked at the screen. We will stay until the work is done. Ivanova looked at the Athosian woman sitting beside her, the specific quality of someone from a completely different universe, a completely different history, a completely different kind of war, who had arrived in the wrong place at the wrong time and had immediately started figuring out what she could contribute. Sheridan's going to want to give you a commission, Ivanova said. That will not be necessary, Teyla said. No, Ivanova said, but he'll want to. The signal. At 1547, the isolated shadow vessel did something that should not have been possible. It sent a signal. Not through its severed subspace communication channel. The great machine's weapon had closed that completely, and Draal confirmed it was still closed. Not through hyperspace. The vessel was not equipped for independent hyperspace communication. Not through any channel in the Babylon 5 sensor suite's recognition database. Through subspace. The specific subspace channel that the ancient database identified as the dimensional boundary communication architecture, the same channel the Great Machine used, the same channel the ZPM's dimensional boundary tap was operating on, the same channel that McKay had been reading as background noise and had filed under investigation later. The signal lasted 0.7 seconds. Draal received it through the machine. McKay received it through the ZPM interface hardware. They looked at each other through their respective comms in the specific silence of two people who had just received the same anomalous data and were independently arriving at the same conclusion. It used the dimensional boundary channel, McKay said. Yes, Draal said. It shouldn't be able to do that, McKay said. The shadow vessel's communication architecture is biological. It uses the shadow network, which is a subspace channel, but not the dimensional boundary channel. Those are different channels. There's no biological interface in any shadow ship I've read about in the ancient database that would allow Dr. McKay, Draal said. Yes, McKay said. The shadow vessel did not send the signal, Draal said. The signal came through the shadow vessel. It was using the vessel as a relay. Pause. The specific quality of a planetary intelligence processing something it found genuinely unexpected. Something on the other side of the dimensional boundary is attempting to communicate. McKay was very still. The other side, he said. Yes, Draal said. Which other side? McKay said. Our universe? Another universe entirely? The N. Unknown, Draal said. The signal's origin is not localized to a specific universe. It is localized to the dimensional boundary itself, the space between spaces. He paused. I believe, and the machine agrees with this assessment, that the signal is from the ancients. The ZPM room was completely silent. Our ancients, McKay said. Or their equivalent, Draal said. The ascended beings who operate at the dimensional boundary level, who have been operating there since they left the physical plane. A pause. The signal is 0.7 seconds of data. I have a partial translation. What does it say? McKay said. Draal was quiet for 4.1 seconds. You found the city, Draal said. Good. Now find the key. The war ends not with weapons, but with the question the shadows cannot answer. A pause. Ask them why. McKay read the translation 3 times. Then he opened the comm to Sheppard. Sheppard, he said. McKay, Sheppard said. The ancients just sent us a message, McKay said, through the dimensional boundary, using a shadow vessel as a relay. He paused. The message is, I want to be precise, here, cryptic, but I think I understand what it means. Tell me, Sheppard said. The shadows have been running the same program for 1,000,000 years, McKay said. Conflict drives evolution. War makes species stronger. Survival of the fittest at civilizational scale. He paused. They've never been asked why. Not sincerely. Not by someone who could make them answer. He paused again. The ancient database has everything the ancients knew about shadow biology, shadow philosophy, shadow history, including, he paused for longer, including the fact that the shadows had a reason, originally, a genuine reason that became a pathology over 1,000,000 years. End quote. He looked at the translation on his screen. Ask them why. He paused. Sheppard, I think the ancients are telling us the war doesn't end when we defeat the shadows. Then when does it end? Sheppard said. When the shadows remember why they started, McKay said. The ZPM read 71%. The dimensional boundary tap ran its steady, continuous feed. Somewhere beyond the physical universe, in the space between spaces, something ancient and ascended had been watching a flying city land in the wrong universe and had decided, in the specific timing of beings that operated on a timeline measured in millennia, that now was the moment to say something. Ask them why. The war ends not with weapons, 71%. The key, unfound. The question, unasked. The work, continuing. Sheppard told McKay the plan at 1,700. McKay's response took 8.3 seconds and covered, in order, the biological threat profile of an uncontrolled shadow vessel at close range, the specific inadvisability of approaching a living weapons system that had already demonstrated hostile intent, the complete absence of any precedent in either the ancient database or the Babylon 5 operational record for a productive, direct conversation with a shadow vessel, and the statistical probability of the approach resulting in outcomes that were not compatible with continued existence. Then he said, "I'm coming with you." Sheppard looked at him. "Obviously," McKay said, "someone has to translate the ancient database in real time, and none of you read ancient at speed." He picked up his datapad. "I want it on record that I think this is a terrible idea." "Noted," Sheppard said. "I want it on record that I said it was a terrible idea and came anyway," McKay said. "Because when this works, I want appropriate credit, and when it doesn't work, I want appropriate sympathy." "Also noted," Sheppard said. "Right," McKay said. "Let's go talk to an ancient evil." Sheridan came. Ivanova had argued against it with the specific focused intensity of a second-in-command who had spent 4 years watching her commanding officer do things that were correct and dangerous, and that she could not stop him from doing, and had developed, in the watching, the specific professional frustration of someone who was always right about the danger and never right about the outcome. "You're the captain," she said. "Yes," Sheridan said. "Captains don't approach isolated shadow vessels in shuttles," she said. "This one does," Sheridan said. "Sheridan, Susan." He looked at her with the specific quality of a man who had faced the shadows for 2 years and had learned, in the face, that the moments that felt most impossible were frequently the moments that mattered most. The ancients sent a message through a shadow vessel using a channel that those vessels aren't supposed to be able to access. They told us to ask why. They've been running this war from the dimensional boundary level for longer than our civilization has existed, and they chose this moment, this city, this team, this system to ask them why. He paused. "I'm going to go ask them why." Ivanova looked at him. "I'll have white stars on standby," she said. "I know," he said. "If you're not back in 2 hours, you'll do what needs to be done," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. "Come back," she said. The specific quality of Ivanova saying something personal, rare, direct, carrying the specific weight of things left unsaid around it. "I intend to," Sheridan said. The shuttle was a Babylon 5 Starfury 2-person configuration, Sheridan piloting, Sheppard in the co-pilot seat with his ancient tablet, and McKay directly behind them in the most uncomfortable position. A man of McKay's specific opinions about physical comfort had occupied in recent memory. Ronon had attempted to come. Sheppard had looked at him. Ronon had looked at the shuttle's interior dimensions. "Fine," Ronon had said. He was on the east pier with his weapon and the specific expression of a man standing watch who was doing it thoroughly. The shadow vessel was 8,000 kilometers out. At Starfury, speeds approximately 2,500 kilometers per minute. In normal space, it was a 20-minute approach. Sheridan flew it in silence for the first 10 minutes, the specific quality of a pilot who processed significant approaches by being quiet and present. Sheppard did the same. McKay read the ancient database entries on shadow biology, shadow philosophy, and the specific historical record of the ancients' interactions with the shadows in the Babylon 5 universe. The traces, the fragments, the 10-million-year-old records, that the great machine's deep memory had contained and that Draal had shared with the database team that morning. At the 15-minute mark, McKay said, "The ancients called them the Sheridan." Sheridan looked up. "What does that mean?" "Approximately the ones who forgot the question," McKay said. "In ancient, the translation is imprecise, but the components are clear. Kari is a specific ancient term for loss of foundational purpose. Von is complex. It covers being, identity, origin." He paused. "The ones who forgot why they exist." He looked at the data pad. The ancient record describes first contact with the shadows approximately 900 million years ago. At that point, the shadows were not what they are now. The ancient records describe them as a species in early crisis. Something had happened to their homeworld. Something had fractured their society. They had developed a philosophy: conflict drives evolution. The strong survive. War is the mechanism of civilizational development as a response to trauma. He paused. Ah, it was a trauma response 900 million years ago, and they never stopped. The shuttle was quiet. 900 million years of trauma response, Sheridan said. "Yes," McKay said. Sheridan paused. "That's not what I expected." "No," McKay said. "It's not what anyone expects. Because the shadows, as they are now, are a billion years removed from whatever made them this way, and the philosophy has become the identity, and the identity has been the cause of more death than anything else in this galaxy's history." He paused. "But the ancients knew. They knew from the beginning, and they left. They ascended. They watched." He looked at the database. They were waiting for someone who could hold both things at once. What the shadows are, what the shadows were, what the question is. The shadow vessel was visible now, the specific dark organic shape of it against the stars. The living ship, vast and alien and damaged. Its severed communication architecture, making it the specific thing the machine's weapon had reduced it to. Alone. "Hailing frequency," Sheppard said. "On what channel?" Sheridan said. "The dimensional boundary channel," McKay said. "The same one it used to relay the ancient signal. If it can be received on that channel," he configured the shuttle's comm system with the specific, rapid precision of a man who had been working with ancient communication architecture for 2 years. "There," Sheridan looked at the shadow vessel. At Sheppard. "You want to do the talking?" Sheridan said. Sheppard looked at the vessel. "You've been fighting them longer?" Sheppard said. "You know them better." But he paused. "The ancient database is mine. If it responds to ancient communication protocols, together," Sheridan said. "Together," Sheppard said. Sheridan keyed the comm. "Shadow vessel," he said. "This is Captain John Sheridan, Babylon 5. We are approaching without weapons active. We're not here to engage you." He paused. "We want to ask you something." Silence. The vessel did not move, did not fire. Silence for 11.3 seconds. The specific, long silence of something very old, receiving a communication it had not been expecting and processing it through systems that were not accustomed to processing this specific category of input. Then, the dimensional boundary channel produced something. Not words, not in any language the universal translator could process. Something older than language. Something that operated below the level of the translator's linguistic algorithms. The specific register of a species that had been communicating at the dimensional boundary level for so long that their language had partially merged with the medium. McKay looked at his tablet. The ancient database was running a translation. "It's asking," McKay said slowly, "why we aren't running or fighting." He paused. "It doesn't have a category for what we're doing. Approaching without weapons in the context of a conflict is not in its operational model." "Tell it," Sheppard said, "that we're from outside its operational model." McKay transmitted the ancient equivalent. Another silence shorter. 4.3 seconds. The channel produced something again. It wants to know, McKay said. What we want. Sheridan looked at the vessel. He had been building toward this moment for 2 years. Not this specific moment. Not a shuttle approach to an isolated shadow vessel with an ancient database and a man from another universe. But the moment of the question. The thing that the war had always been missing. Not more ships, not better weapons, not a larger coalition. The question. Ask it, Sheridan said. Why? McKay looked at him. Just why? McKay said. Why? Sheridan said. Why the war? Why a million years of seeding conflict? Why philosophy? Why? He paused. Why in the beginning? Before philosophy became the identity, what happened? What broke? What the shadows were before they were what they are. McKay looked at the ancient database. He found the specific ancient formulation, the Carivon notation, the specific question embedded in the name the ancients had given them 900 million years ago, and he transmitted it. What was the question? You forgot. The silence lasted 47 seconds. Sheppard counted them. At second 47, the dimensional boundary channel opened, and what came through was not what he expected. Not aggression, not a weapons lock. Not the specific hostile response of a billion-year-old species that had been seeding civilizational conflict since before Earth had multicellular life. What came through was the specific quality of something breaking. Not physically, the vessel was intact. The sensors showed no change in its structural status. But the communication, the specific quality of the transmission on the dimensional boundary channel, had the quality of something that had been held for a very long time releasing. The specific sound of a billion years of trauma response, encountering, for the first time in its entire operational history, a question it had not modeled for. McKay read the translation as it came through. His face changed. McKay, Sheppard said. Give me a moment, McKay said. He read it again. His voice, when he spoke, had the specific quality of a man who had processed something that exceeded his existing framework and was delivering it without editorializing because the content was sufficient. It says, he stopped, started again. It says, our world ended. Everything we built ended. We had a question we could not answer. Why do civilizations end when they have so much left to do? And we decided the answer was weakness. That civilizations end because they become weak. That the solution was to ensure no civilization could become weak. That strength required. He stopped again. That strength required constant testing. That the only way to prevent the ending was to ensure that only the strongest survived the testing. He looked up. 900 million years ago, the shadows lost everything. Their entire civilization. Something destroyed it. The database doesn't specify what. The ancient record is fragmentary here, and their response to the loss was to ensure that no species would ever be as vulnerable as they were. By making every species fight, by making the strong survive. End quote. He paused. They've been trying to prevent their own ending for 900 million years. By imposing it on everyone else. He paused for longer. They forgot that wasn't the question. The question was why civilizations end, not how to prevent weakness. Why? They forgot their own question. The shuttle was completely still. Sheridan looked at the shadow vessel. The specific dark organic shape of something 900 million years old that had just, in 47 seconds of silence, followed by one transmission, described the origin of the most destructive force in the known galaxy as grief. They're grieving, Sheridan said. They've been grieving for 900 million years, McKay said. And they turned grief into a philosophy, and philosophy into an identity, and the identity into a war that has killed more beings than any other force in history. He looked at the tablet, and nobody has ever asked them why. Not once. Not in 900 million years. Unquote. Sheppard looked at the vessel. He thought about the Wraith. The Wraith, who had been human once, the specific Pegasus tragedy, the species that the ancient experiments had produced accidentally, that fed on human life because its biology required it, that had been fighting the ancients and then humanity for 10,000 years, because the biology had become identity and the identity had become war. Different, not the same, but the shape of it, the specific shape of a species that had lost something and had built its entire civilization around the loss. Familiar. Ask it, Sheppard said. McKay looked at him. Ask it what? The question was forgotten, Sheppard said. Why do civilizations end? He paused. We have 10,000 years of ancient knowledge in that city. We have the ancients themselves on the dimensional boundary sending us messages. We have the great machine and the Vorlons and the complete database of a civilization that faced extinction and chose to build libraries instead of only weapons. He looked at McKay. Ask it if it wants the answer. McKay looked at him for 3.1 seconds. Then he turned to his tablet. He found the ancient formulation. He transmitted it. We have studied the question you forgot. We have an answer. Do you want to hear it? The response came in 2.3 seconds. The fastest the shadow vessel had responded to anything. One word. The universal translator handled it without difficulty, the specific, simple, ancient formulation that came through the dimensional boundary channel with the specific quality of something that had been waiting 900 million years to be said. Yes, McKay read. Kosh. The Vorlon was on the East Pier when Sheppard's shuttle docked. Standing in the alien dawn light, Atlantis's second morning in the wrong universe, the ZPM at 79%. The dimensional boundary tap running its steady feed with the specific quality of someone who had arrived at the pier before the shuttle returned and had been waiting. Sheppard stepped off the shuttle. He looked at Kosh. You knew, Sheppard said, what the shadows were. What happened to them 900 million years ago? Yes, Kosh said. Why didn't you tell anyone? Sheppard said. The encounter suit was still for 6.2 seconds, the longest pause Sheppard had observed from the Vorlon, the specific duration of a being deciding how much truth the moment required. We forgot too, Kosh said. We remembered what the shadows became. We forgot what made them become it. We fought the symptom for 1,000,000 years and called it a war. Sheppard looked at the alien ocean. The ancients remembered, he said. The ancients ascended to the boundary to remember, Kosh said. They went there specifically to hold the question, to wait for someone to arrive who could carry the answer back. The bioluminescence shifted. You were not brought here to fight the shadow war. You were brought here to end it. With a question, Sheppard said. With the answer, Kosh said. The question was always there. 900 million years of waiting. The answer required someone who had faced their own ending and chosen differently. The bioluminescence shifted again. The ancients faced extinction. They built Atlantis. They built libraries. They ascended to continue working rather than to escape. Another pause. They chose differently. That is the answer. Sheppard looked at the city behind him. At McKay coming down the shuttle ramp with his tablet and 3 new research threads and the specific focused energy of a man who had just had the most significant conversation of his life and was already figuring out what came next. At Teyla on the pier, who had been watching the shuttle approach with the specific quality of someone who had trusted and was receiving the trust back intact. At Atlantis, 79% and climbing, 10,000 years old, wrong universe, alien ocean, carrying everything the ancients had built and chosen and left behind. The answer is the city, Sheppard said. Yes, Kosh said. We show them what we built instead of what we lost, Sheppard said. Yes, Kosh said. Sheppard looked at the shadow vessel's position on his tablet, still 8,000 kilometers out, still isolated, still alone in the specific way the machine's weapon had made it, waiting for an answer 900 million years overdue. "McKay," Sheppard said. "Already working on it," McKay said. He was at his tablet, the ancient database open, the specific, focused clarity of a man who had found the most important problem of his career and was not going to stop until it was solved. The ancient database has a complete record of civilizational recovery, species that faced extinction and rebuilt. The specific mechanisms, social, technological, philosophical, that the ancients documented across 10,000 years of Pegasus anthropology. The answer isn't one thing. It's comprehensive. He paused. It's going to take time to transmit. How much time? Sheppard said. McKay looked at the ZPM reading, at the dimensional boundary tap, at the shadow vessel waiting in the dark. As much as it needs, McKay said. We have permanent power. We have the database. We have the channel. He looked at Sheppard. We have time. The ZPM read 81%. The city hummed. The question answered. The answer. The city. The war. Not over. But the ending. Begun. 81%. The work. Continuing. The transmission began at 2,100. Not because McKay needed the extra hours. The ancient database's relevant sections had been compiled, organized, and formatted for dimensional boundary channel transmission by 1800. The specific efficiency of a man who worked fastest when the problem was important enough to make him stop arguing with himself about methodology and simply do the work. The delay was deliberate. McKay had spent the intervening 3 hours reading the ancient anthropological records, not scanning, not searching, reading. The specific slow engagement of a man who had been living with the ancient database for 2 years and had never sat with it the way it deserved to be sat with, because there had always been a more immediate problem requiring the database as a tool rather than as a text. What the ancients had documented across 10,000 years of Pegasus anthropology was not a clinical record. It was the specific accumulated weight of people who had watched species rise and fall and had written down what they saw, with the specific quality of witnesses who understood that the seeing and the writing were themselves a form of answer to the question that everything in the Pegasus Galaxy was always implicitly asking. Why do civilizations end? The ancients had watched the Illyrians rebuild after the first wraith culling. They had documented the Hoffin's choice, the specific tragedy of a species that had chosen a different answer to the question, had chosen to make themselves inedible to the wraith at the cost of their own biology, had chosen survival over flourishing, and had found the cost too high only after it was paid. They had recorded the Lanteans' own near extinction, the evacuation to Earth, the 10,000 years of wraith dominance in Pegasus, with the specific honesty of people who did not omit their own failures from the record. The record was not triumphant. It was honest. And honesty, McKay had concluded in 1947, while eating a meal he did not remember eating, was the specific quality that made it the right answer to send to a species that had been lying to itself for 900 million years. The transmission went through the dimensional boundary channel at 2,100. Not fast, the channel's bandwidth was sufficient for the machine's weapons application and for short communications, but not for the uncompressed transmission of 10,000 years of anthropological documentation. McKay had compressed it, had built a decompression key into the transmission header using ancient mathematical notation that the shadow vessel's dimensional boundary interface should be able to process, had structured the transmission as a series of discrete records rather than a continuous stream so that the receiving system could process each record before the next arrived. The first record took 11 minutes to transmit. The shadow vessel received it. McKay knew because the dimensional boundary channel registered the specific acknowledgement signal, not a word, not a translation, the specific technical confirmation of a receiving system logging a successful data transfer. The same signal a computer sent when a file download completed. The second record went at 2112. The third at 2123. McKay sat at the ZPM room console and watched the transmission log with the specific quality of a man doing the most important work of his life and finding that the doing of it had a specific quality of stillness, not the frantic urgency of crisis work, not the compressed efficiency of a deadline, but the specific patient quality of work that mattered being done at the pace it required. Sheppard came in at 2200 with 2 cups of coffee. He put one beside McKay. He sat on the floor with his back against the ZPM housing and drank the other one. They didn't speak for 20 minutes. Then McKay said, "The Hoffens." "Yeah," Sheppard said. "I included them," McKay said. "Their record, what they chose, what it cost." He paused. "The wrong answer is part of the answer." The ancients understood that. They documented the Hoffens with the same care that they documented everyone else. Not judgment, just what happened, what was chosen, what followed. He paused. I think that's important. For the shadows specifically. A species that has been making the same wrong choice for 900 million years needs to see that wrong choices are documented, witnessed, part of the record, not erased. He paused. And survivable, when you stop making them. Sheppard looked at his coffee. "The Wraith," he said. "Yes," McKay said. "I included them too." Sheppard looked at him. "The ancients' record of the Wraith's origin," McKay said. "The specific tragedy of it. A species the ancients created accidentally through their own experiments, their own wrong choice, and then spent 10,000 years fighting instead of." He stopped. Instead of asking why. He paused. "I included it because the shadows need to see that the people whose answer we're transmitting also made catastrophic mistakes, also created things they couldn't control, also spent millennia fighting symptoms instead of asking questions." He paused. "The ancients aren't a perfect civilization delivering perfect wisdom. They're a civilization that made mistakes, documented them honestly, and kept building anyway." Sheppard was quiet. "That's better," he said. "Yes," McKay said. "I think so. The Shadow Network." At 2247, the Shadow Network noticed. Not the transmission, the dimensional boundary channel was below the Shadow Network's standard monitoring threshold. The specific blind spot that the machine's weapon had exploited and that McKay's transmission was continuing to exploit. What the network noticed was the continued silence of its vessel. Shadow vessels did not stay silent. The network's communication architecture was constant, the specific, continuous signal of a living ship maintaining its connection to the whole, the biological equivalent of a heartbeat that the network monitored, not because it needed to, but because the monitoring was identity, was the specific thing that made a shadow vessel part of the shadow rather than merely a shadow. 3 days of silence. The network sent an envoy. Not a weapons platform, not the specific shadow deployment profile of a species moving to destroy a threat. An envoy. The specific distinction that Ivanova flagged at 2251 when the new hyperspace window opened at the system's edge and she ran the energy signature and found something she had not encountered in 4 years on Babylon 5. "It's different," she said in the comm. "The energy signature is shadow, definitely shadow, but the vessel profile is smaller than a standard attack vessel. More like," she paused, "I don't have a category for it. It reads as a shadow vessel that is specifically not configured for combat." "An envoy," Sheridan said. "That's not a thing the shadows do," Ivanova said. "It is now," Sheridan said. The envoy vessel held at the system's edge. It did not advance, did not deploy weapons, did not do any of the things that 4 years of Shadow War experience had trained every Babylon 5 crew member to expect from a shadow vessel in proximity. It waited. Draal read it through the machine. "It is attempting to communicate With the isolated vessel, he said, through the standard shadow network channel. The network channel is still severed. My weapon is holding. It cannot reach the vessel through the standard channel. A pause. It has just attempted the dimensional boundary channel. Can it access it? McKay said. He was at his console. Transmission log running. Record 14 of 47 currently in transit. No, Draal said. The dimensional boundary channel access requires a specific architectural modification that only the isolated vessel has. The modification the ancient signal introduced when it used the vessel as a relay. The envoy does not have it. Another pause. It is aware that a channel exists that it cannot access. It is attempting to locate the channel's origin. It'll find us, Sheppard said. Yes, Draal said, in approximately 40 minutes. Sheppard looked at the transmission log. Record 14 of 47. 26 minutes per record at current transmission rate. 14 records transmitted. 33 remaining. Approximately 14 hours of transmission time left. McKay, Sheppard said. I can increase the transmission rate, McKay said. Compression increase. I can get it to 18 minutes per record without significant data loss. 12 hours total from now. He was already adjusting the parameters. But if the envoy finds us in 40 minutes, keep transmitting, Sheppard said. McKay looked at him. Whatever the envoy does when it finds us, Sheppard said, the transmission continues. That's the priority. And if the envoy decides to stop the transmission by stopping us, McKay said. Sheppard looked at the ZPM reading, 88%. Then we have 88% ZPM power, 60 ancient drones, the Great Machine's weapon systems, 3 White Stars that Ivanova has on standby, and the specific problem-solving capacity of a team that has been making things work in impossible situations for 2 years. He paused. The transmission continues. McKay looked at the log, at the ZPM, at Sheppard. Right, McKay said. He increased the compression rate. What Sheridan did. Sheridan did not wait for the envoy to find them. He went to see it. Not in a shuttle this time, in a White Star, the specific Minbari human hybrid vessel that was the Coalition's most capable ship, fast and well-armed, and built by people who understood both the technical and the philosophical dimensions of fighting the shadows. Lanier at the helm, Sheridan in the command position. Ivanova's voice on the comm. You're doing the thing again. I know, Sheridan said. You're going toward the shadow vessel, she said. The envoy, he said. Yes, there's a distinction, she said, between going toward a threat and going to meet it. Yes, he said. There is. He paused. Which one is this? A pause from Ivanova. The second one, she said. Probably. Then I'm fine, he said. The White Star accelerated toward the system's edge. The envoy vessel was smaller than Sheridan had expected. Not small shadow vessels were never small. The specific biological scale of a species that built ships the way other species built organisms, large and purposeful, and carrying the specific quality of something alive. But smaller than a standard attack vessel, the specific profile of a ship that had been designed for a different purpose than destruction, and that showed the difference in its configuration, the way purpose always showed in design. It registered the White Star's approach. It did not engage weapons. Sheridan opened the dimensional boundary channel. McKay had configured the White Star's communication suite before departure, the specific rapid systems work of a man who understood that the channel was the tool and wanted it available on every platform. Shadow vessel, Sheridan said. I'm John Sheridan. We've met before, your ships and mine, under different circumstances. He paused. I'm told you're looking for the vessel we isolated. I can tell you that it's intact. It's not damaged. It's receiving a transmission that we initiated. He paused. But I'm going to tell you what the transmission is. Not to stop you, not to threaten you, to explain. Silence on the channel. 22 seconds. Then the dimensional boundary channel, not the shadow network channel, not the standard communication architecture, but the specific channel that the isolated vessel had accessed when it relayed the ancient signal opened from the envoy's end. The universal translator worked for 4.1 seconds. Then it produced a single word. "Explain," the envoy said. Sheridan looked at Lenier. Lenier looked at the sensor, reading the envoy vessel. Stationary, weapons, inactive, dimensional boundary channel open. "Captain," Lenier said, "it is listening." Sheridan looked at the shadow vessel, at the stars around it, at the galaxy that had been at war with these beings for 1,000,000 years, that had never asked why, that had been fighting the symptom while the question went unanswered in the specific way of a wound that never closed because no one had looked at what made it. He took a breath. 900 million years ago, he said, something destroyed your world. The channel was open. The envoy was listening. Sheridan talked. The ZPM room, midnight. The transmission reached record 23 at midnight. McKay was still at the console. He had been there for 7 hours and would be there for 7 more, and had achieved the specific state of a man so completely absorbed in work that the physical requirements of the human body had been reduced to background processes running at minimum viable levels. Teyla brought him food at 0030. He ate it without looking at it. "The shadow vessel," Teyla said. "The isolated one. Is it still receiving?" "Every record," McKay said. "The acknowledgement signals are consistent. It's processing the data." He paused. I don't know what that means for a species that's been running the same program for 900 million years. I don't know if 900 million years of identity can be addressed by 10,000 years of someone else's anthropological record." He paused. "But it's receiving. It's acknowledging. It hasn't closed the channel." He looked at the log. 23 records. The ancients' documentation of 18 species that faced extinction-level events and rebuilt, their specific choices, their specific mistakes, the specific quality of, he paused, of continuing anyway. Teyla sat beside him. "You believe it will work," she said. McKay looked at the transmission log, at the ZPM, at the ancient database open on his secondary screen, 10,000 years of honest witness to the specific endurance of species that faced the worst thing and kept building. "I believe," McKay said carefully, "that if there is anything left in the shadows of what they were before, the grief became the philosophy, before the trauma became the identity, then yes." He paused. "Because what the database contains is not an argument. It's not a tactical document. It's not a weapon." He paused. "It's evidence that the question they forgot has an answer. That civilizations end when they stop asking the question, and that the ones that keep asking it, even imperfectly, even with catastrophic mistakes along the way," he stopped. "Survive," Teyla said. "Build," McKay said. "It's not just survival. The ancients were very specific about this. Survival is the minimum. Building is the answer." He looked at the screen. "Atlantis is the answer, not as a weapon, as a demonstration." He paused. "As evidence that the question has an answer, and that the answer is worth the building." Teyla looked at the ancient architecture above them. The city, 10,000 years old, 91% ZPM power, and climbing, holding its patient quality in the alien ocean. "Then we transmit all 47 records," she said. "All 47, McKay said. "And then?" Teyla said. McKay looked at the log, with 12 hours remaining. "Then we see," he said, "what 900 million years of grief does with an answer it's been waiting for." The ZPM read 91%. The transmission continued. Record 24 began at 0047. The East Pier, 0200. Sheppard was on the pier again. The specific habit of a man who processed significant things by sitting with the ocean, who had found in 2 years on Atlantis that the water helped the specific quality of a large body of water at night, The alien chemistry of it, slightly wrong and completely present. The stars above it, the wrong stars, and genuinely beautiful. Garibaldi found him, sat beside him without asking. They had the specific comfortable silence of two people who had spent enough of the last 3 days in each other's operational proximity to have arrived at the specific professional ease that comes before friendship, and that sometimes becomes it. Ronon, Garibaldi said. Yeah, Sheppard said. He stood at the north perimeter for 8 hours, Garibaldi said. I had to order him to stand down. He doesn't really do orders, Sheppard said. I noticed, Garibaldi said. I told him I needed the perimeter covered at first light and he needed to be sharp for it. He accepted that. A pause. He's something. 7 years as a runner, Sheppard said. The Wraith implant a tracking device and hunt you. You run. You survive however you can. 7 years. He paused. He ran toward them eventually. I decided running was the wrong answer. He paused. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? Garibaldi thought about that. Yeah, he said. Yeah, it does. He looked at the stars, the transmission, McKay's thing, the shadow database. He paused. You think it works? Sheppard looked at the ocean. I think, he said, that the ancients ascended to hold a question for 900 million years and waited for someone to bring the answer back. I think they chose us specifically, this team, this city, this specific combination of people who have been making the wrong thing work since 2004. He paused. I think they had good reasons. That's not an answer, Garibaldi said. No, Sheppard said. It's not. He paused. I think it works. I think it works because the alternative is that 10,000 years of ancient knowledge and 4 years of your war and everything this team has survived adds up to nothing, and I don't believe that. He paused. I've never believed that. Garibaldi looked at him, at the city behind them, at the alien ocean holding its specific patient quality. Sheridan's still with the envoy, Garibaldi said. 6 hours. They've been talking for 6 hours. Good, Sheppard said. Is it? Garibaldi said. The shadows have been waiting 900 million years for someone to ask the right question, Sheppard said. 6 hours is nothing. Garibaldi absorbed this. You know, he said, when I woke up this morning, I thought the most complicated thing I'd deal with today was the power allocation dispute between the Drazi and the Brakiri. Sheppard looked at him. What happened to it? Sheppard said. Still unresolved, Garibaldi said. Somewhere in the list of things below transmitting the answer to 900 million years of shadow grief. Sheppard looked at the stars. Put it on my list, he said. Garibaldi looked at him. You don't have jurisdiction over the Drazi and the Brakiri, Garibaldi said. No, Sheppard said. But McKay has the ancient diplomatic protocols database, and he owes me a favor. He paused. Technically, I saved his life on Tuesday. It's Thursday, Garibaldi said. Recent favor, Sheppard said. Garibaldi made the specific sound of a man who had been the chief of security on a space station for 4 years and had developed the specific ability to find things genuinely funny in the middle of genuinely impossible situations. The pier held its quiet. The ocean held its alien chemistry. The ZPM read 93%, record 29 transmitting. Sheridan, still talking. The question being answered. The city holding 93%. 18 records remaining. The work continuing. The transmission completed at 1,134. 47 records. 18 species that had faced extinction-level events and rebuilt. The Hoffins, who had chosen wrong, and what had followed. The Wraith's origin, the specific Pegasus tragedy, the ancients' own catastrophic mistake, documented with the honest quality of people who did not omit their failures from the record. The Lantian evacuation, the specific accumulated weight of 10,000 years of witness to the endurance of species that kept building when they had every reason to stop. McKay watched the final acknowledgement signal come through at 1,134 and sat back in his chair and did not say anything for 2.3 minutes. Not processing, he had been processing continuously for 14 hours. The 2.3 minutes were something else. The specific quality of a man who had done the most important thing he had ever done, and was giving the doing of it the space it required before moving to whatever came next. Then he opened the comm. "Sheppard," he said. "Here," Sheppard said. "Transmission complete," McKay said. "All 47 records." The isolated vessel acknowledged every one. He paused. "Now we wait." "How long?" Sheppard said. "I have no idea," McKay said. "There is no precedent for this. There is no ancient database entry that covers the expected response time of a 900-million-year-old species receiving evidence that their foundational philosophy is a grief response." He paused. "I would estimate longer than we want and shorter than we fear." Sheridan returns. The White Star docked at 1200. Sheridan walked off it with the specific quality of a man who had been talking for 9 hours and had arrived at something he had not expected to arrive at, and was still integrating it. Ivanova met him at the dock. She looked at him. He looked at her. "Well?" she said. "They remember," Sheridan said. Ivanova was very still. "The shadows remember what they lost," Sheridan said. 900 million years ago. It's not a specific memory the way we think of memory. It's biological. It's in their cellular architecture, the specific trauma response encoded at the biological level. The grief written into their DNA so thoroughly that it became operational programming. He paused. The envoy described it to me. In the dimensional boundary channel, the translation took time. The concepts don't map cleanly onto human language, but I understood enough. He paused again. They remember the world ending. Every shadow carries it. It's not historical knowledge, it's physical. The way you carry a scar. You don't remember getting it every moment, but it's always there, always affecting how you move. Ivanova looked at him. "And the transmission," she said. "McKay's 47 records. The envoy received them too," Sheridan said. "I transmitted a copy through the dimensional boundary channel during our conversation. He stopped. "Susan." It read the Hoffen record, and it was quiet for 11 minutes. 11 minutes. And when it responded, it said, he paused. It said, "We chose that answer. We chose the Hoffen answer. We chose to make everything strong so nothing could be as weak as we were. We chose it 900 million years ago, and we have been choosing it since, and we did not know it was the wrong answer until now." The dock was completely still. "Because nobody asked?" Ivanova said. "Because nobody asked?" Sheridan said. He looked at the city around him, the ancient architecture, the alien ocean visible through the observation port, the specific, vast quality of a place that had been built by people who had faced their own ending and chosen differently. "The envoy wants to come to Atlantis," he said. Ivanova looked at him. "A shadow vessel," she said. "I want to come to Atlantis." "Yes," Sheridan said. "And you said?" Ivanova said. I said I'd ask," Sheridan said. The conference room at 1300 had a specific quality, not the 0900 quality of first contact, the specific, careful choreography of people establishing that they were willing to be in the same room, not the 0800 quality of McKay delivering findings to a waiting audience. This was the specific quality of a room in which people who had been through something significant together were sitting with the weight of what came next. Sheppard looked at Sheridan. "How large is the envoy vessel?" he said. "Smaller than the isolated vessel," Sheridan said. "Approximately 400 meters. It can hold its position off the East Pier." "Can we communicate with it directly from the city?" McKay said. "Without the shuttle relay?" "The dimensional boundary channel is accessible from the ZPM room," McKay said, answering his own question. "Yes. I configured it this morning." "The isolated vessel," Teyla said. "What is its status?" "Draal," Sheppard said into the comm. "The isolated vessel has been stationary since the transmission completed," Draal said. It has made no aggressive movement, no weapons activation, no attempt to restore its severed network connection. A pause. It has been another pause. The specific quality of a planetary intelligence, choosing its words carefully. It has been transmitting on the dimensional boundary channel, not to us, not to the envoy, to the dimensional boundary itself. A pause. I believe it is attempting to communicate with whatever sent the original signal, with the ascended beings on the other side. Pause. The room was quiet. It's talking to the ancients, McKay said. Or attempting to, Draal said. Whether the ancients are responding, I cannot determine. The boundary is active, more active than it has been since Atlantis arrived. Something on the other side is present. He paused, paying attention. Sheppard looked at Kosh. Kosh looked at Sheppard. They hear it, Kosh said. The ancients hear the isolated vessel, Sheppard said. Yes, Kosh said. What are they saying to it? Sheppard said. Kosh was still for 7.1 seconds, the longest pause yet, the specific duration of a being accessing something at the dimensional boundary level and translating it into terms that a human mind could receive. The same thing they have always said, Kosh said, to every species, in every age. Another pause. You are not too late. The East Pier, 1,500. The envoy vessel came at 1,500. McKay had authorized it, the specific chain of command being somewhat informal, given that the city was in the wrong universe and the situation had no precedent in any operational manual after Sheppard had looked at the ZPM. Reading, at the drone complement, at the Great Machine's weapon status, 2-2-I, and had made the specific calculation of a man who had been running impossible situations for 2 years and had developed a reliable instinct for the difference between a risk that was acceptable and one that wasn't. The envoy vessel was 400 meters long. It held position 2 kilometers off the East Pier, close enough for the dimensional boundary channel to run at full clarity, far enough that its physical presence was observable but not immediately threatening. It did not look like a weapons platform from this angle. It looked, in the specific alien organic quality of shadow construction, like something that had been built for a purpose other than war. The configuration subtly different from the attack vessels, the specific profile of a ship that had been grown rather than constructed, and that had been grown for something that its builders had needed badly enough to build a dedicated vessel for. What is it for? Ronon said. He was on the pier. He had been on the pier since 1400. The specific Satadan instinct of a man who stood between his people and the threat, regardless of how the threat was currently being classified. I think, Sheppard said, standing beside him, it's a listening vessel. Ronon looked at him. The shadows send it when they want to understand something, Sheppard said. Not to fight, not to manipulate, just to understand. He paused. I don't think they've used it much. In the last 900 million years. 100. Ronon looked at the vessel. It's still dangerous, he said. Yes, Sheppard said. We could be wrong about its intentions, Ronon said. Yes, Sheppard said. You're going to talk to it anyway, Ronon said. Yes, Sheppard said. Ronon looked at the vessel for a long moment. I'll be here, he said. I know, Sheppard said. The dimensional boundary channel opened in 1517. McKay at the ZPM room console. Sheppard beside him. Sheridan on the comm from Babylon 5. He had returned to the station to brief the command staff. The specific administrative reality of a captain who had been away from his command for 9 hours and had things to account for, but who had patched into the channel the moment it opened. The envoy's communication came through in 1517 with the specific quality of the dimensional boundary channel older than language, operating below the translator's linguistic algorithms, requiring the ancient database's translation architecture to produce anything approaching human-readable meaning. McKay read it as it came through. His expression changed at the third line. McKay? Sheppard said. Give me a moment, McKay said. He read to the end. He sat back. Right, he said. The envoy vessel is It's describing the Shadow Network's response to the isolated vessel's silence. The 3 days of no communication. What the network experienced. He paused. Sheppard, the Shadow Network is not a communication system in the way we think of communication systems. It's not like a radio network where one station goes silent and the others continue. It's more biological, organic. The whole network is one organism, and the isolated vessel is a part of that organism that has gone silent. He paused. The network has been in distress for 3 days. The kind of distress that a body experiences when a part of it is injured and not communicating. He paused. The envoy was sent not to investigate a tactical situation. It was sent because the network was suffering and needed to understand why. The ZPM room was very quiet. Sheppard looked at the channel reading. They came because they were hurting, he said. Yes, McKay said. Sheridan's voice on the comm, very quiet. Ask it what the network felt when the isolated vessel received the transmission. McKay found the ancient formulation. He transmitted it. The response came in 8.3 seconds. McKay read it. He read it again. He looked at Sheppard. The network felt like an isolated vessel. He stopped. Started again. The network felt it remembered something. The translation is imprecise here. Like a frequency that had been absent for 900 million years, suddenly present again. A specific frequency. The network recognized it, but didn't know from what. He paused. The ancient database translation identifies the frequency description as consistent with what the ancients called vor, the specific state of a species operating in alignment with its foundational purpose. The thing species feel when they are doing what they were meant to do. He paused. The isolated vessel felt vor for the first time in 900 million years when it received the 47th record. He paused. And the entire Shadow Network felt it too. Through the biological connection, all of them, he paused, all of them felt one of their own to remember what they forgot. The room held its silence. Sheppard looked at the dimensional boundary channel reading, at the ancient database. At the ZPM 97%, 2 hours from full charge, the dimensional boundary tap running its steady, permanent feed. McKay, he said. Yes, McKay said. The 47 records, Sheppard said. The complete transmission. Can you send it to the Shadow Network directly? Not to the isolated vessel, to the network itself, through the biological connection? McKay looked at the channel. At the envoy vessel. The envoy vessel has the dimensional boundary channel architecture, McKay said slowly. It received a copy of the transmission during Sheridan's conversation. It is connected to the Shadow Network biologically. He paused. If it chose to relay the transmission through the network, if it chose to share what it received, the network would receive it the same way the isolated vessel did. Through the biological connection. He paused. I can't force that. I can't transmit directly to the network. The network doesn't have dimensional boundary channel access at the node level, but the envoy does. He paused. If I ask it to relay, ask, Sheppard said. McKay found the ancient formulation. He transmitted it. Will you carry this to the others? The dimensional boundary channel was silent for 41 seconds. Sheppard counted them. At second 41, the channel opened. Yes, the envoy said. What happened next? What happened next took 6 hours. McKay did not fully understand the mechanism. The specific biology of the Shadow Network's communication architecture was beyond the ancient database's complete documentation. The specific gap in the record that corresponded to the ancients' limited direct knowledge of Shadow internal biology. But the sensor data was clear enough to read, even without a complete mechanistic understanding. The envoy vessel relayed the transmission. The network received it. The network, the specific biological organism of thousands of shadow vessels and the beings that inhabited them across the known galaxy. The 900 million-year-old architecture of a species that had encoded their founding trauma so deeply into their biology that it had become identity received, 47 records of species that had faced ending and chosen building. And the network felt vor. Not all of it at once. The propagation was biological, not instantaneous. The specific organic spread of something moving through a living system rather than a technical one. But Draal read it through the machine's dimensional boundary sensors, and McKay read it through the ZPM interface, and what they read over 6 hours was the specific data signature of a frequency propagating through a network. A frequency that had been absent for 900 million years. Returning. At 2200, Ivanova's voice came through on the Babylon 5 channel with the specific quality of someone reporting something she had no category for. "The shadow vessels in the Koreana system," she said. "They've stopped. The engagement with the white stars. They've disengaged. They're not retreating. They're not advancing. They're just stopped." Sheppard looked at McKay. McKay looked at the propagation data. "The network reached Koreana approximately 40 minutes ago," McKay said. "Based on the propagation rate." He paused. "It's working." At 2314, a report from the Drazi homeworld, shadow vessels that had been positioning for an assault had pulled back to the system's edge. At 0047, a report from the Narn border, 3 shadow vessels had entered standard orbit around an uninhabited moon and had not moved in 2 hours. Not attacking, not retreating, stopping. The specific behavior of a species encountering a variable that had interrupted their operational programming, not defeated, not destroyed, but interrupted. The specific pause of something 900 million years old, feeling a frequency it had forgotten and not knowing yet what to do with the feeling. Sheppard sat on the East Pier at 0100 and watched the alien stars and did not try to put it into a category. Sheridan's voice on the comm from Babylon 5, quiet. "John." "Yeah," Sheppard said. "The envoy vessel," Sheridan said. "It's transmitting again, on the dimensional boundary channel." He paused. "It wants to know, and the translation took a while, so I want to be precise here. It wants to know if the city will teach them. Not a single transmission. Not 47 records." He paused. "Ongoing. The way the ancients taught before they left." Sheppard looked at the city behind him. Ancient architecture holding its 10,000-year quality in the alien ocean. At the ZPM reading 99%. 1% from full. "McKay," he said. "Awake," McKay said, through the comm, from the ZPM room where he had not left in 20 hours. "The ancient database," Sheppard said. "All of it. 10,847 terabytes. What would it take to make it accessible? Properly accessible. Not 47 records, the whole thing. Searchable, with a translation architecture. With," he paused, "the way the ancients would have done it." McKay was quiet for 4.1 seconds. "A library," McKay said. "Yes," Sheppard said. "Physically," McKay said, "or networked through the dimensional boundary channel?" "Both," Sheppard said. A longer pause. "The great machine's fabrication systems," McKay said. "Draal's cooperation, the dimensional boundary channel as a distribution network." He paused. 6 weeks. Maybe 8. To build the interface architecture and the distribution system. He paused. "But Sheppard, the shadows aren't the only ones who need this. The Narn, the Drazi, the Brakiri, every species in the League of Non-Aligned Worlds. Every species is fighting every war that the shadows seeded." He paused. "The ancients built Atlantis as a repository. They built it to be found and used. This is what it was for." Sheppard looked at the ZPM. 99%. At the alien ocean. At the stars. "Then we build it," he said. The ZPM reached 100% at 0112. The dimensional boundary tap held its steady permanent feed. The city hummed the specific quality of 10,000-year-old systems running at full power for the first time in 2 years. Every system at its optimal capacity. Atlantis, at the configuration it had been built for. Full power. In the wrong universe. In exactly the right place. 100%. The library, to be built. The frequency, returning. The network, listening. 900 million years. And now, something different. The building took 7 weeks. Not 6. McKay's estimate had been 6 weeks. Maybe 8, and the actual duration landed in the middle of that range, with the specific precision of a man who knew how to estimate, and whose estimates were therefore accurate rather than optimistic. 7 weeks of the great machine's fabrication systems running at continuous capacity, of McKay's 47 active research threads narrowing to one, of the specific, focused quality of a team that had found the thing the mission was actually for and was building toward it without the friction of ambiguity. Sheppard flew jumper runs between Atlantis and the great machine's access shaft every second day. Supplies, personnel, the specific logistical maintenance of a project that required continuous human presence in 2 locations simultaneously. He had learned the route in the first week and flew it now with the specific automatic quality of a path that had become familiar, the alien planet below him and the alien stars above him and the city behind him growing in capability every day. Ronon ran around the perimeter every morning. Garibaldi ran it every evening. They had developed in 7 weeks the specific professional shorthand of 2 security professionals who had worked the same ground long enough to trust each other's assessment without requiring explanation. Garibaldi's evening report to Sheppard was always 3 sentences: what had changed, what hadn't, what needed attention. Ronon's morning report was always 1. Clear, Ronon said, every morning. And every morning it was. What was built? The library was not a room. McKay had understood this by the end of the first week, when the architectural requirements of what he was building had exceeded the spatial constraints of any single location on Atlantis, and he had done what he always did. When a problem exceeded its initial parameters, he had expanded the parameters. The library was a network. Atlantis, as the primary node, the ancient database, in its complete 10,847 terabyte form. The translation architecture rebuilt from the ground up with the specific input of Draal's 10 million year perspective on what the beings who had built the great machine had understood about interspecies communication. The search systems rebuilt to be intuitive rather than requiring 2 years of immersion in ancient organizational principles. The great machine as the secondary node, its own 10 million year archive, the specific deep memory of a planetary intelligence that had been observing the galaxy since before the shadows had made their choice, the record of what the galaxy had been before the Long War and what it might be after. The dimensional boundary channel as the distribution system, McKay's interface hardware, scaled up from the single ZPM room installation to a network of 17 relay points distributed across Atlantis's outer hull, each one a dimensional boundary channel access point, each one capable of transmitting to any receiver with compatible architecture anywhere in the known galaxy. The compatible architecture was the specific engineering problem that had taken the most time. Not building it, the ancient database contained the complete specifications for dimensional boundary channel interface hardware, and the great machine's fabrication systems could produce it to any specification, and by week 3, McKay had a production line running that was generating interface units at the rate of 40 per day. The problem was distribution. 40 units per day. 7 weeks, approximately 2,000 units total. The known galaxy had thousands of inhabited worlds, thousands of species, thousands of civilizations that needed the library's contents for reasons that ranged from the Drafa plague treatment that had arrived too late for the Markab to the terraforming protocols for Narn's damaged biosphere to the Simple fact that 10,000 years of honest witness to species that faced ending and chose building was the specific thing that every species in a galaxy that had been living under shadow influence for 1,000,000 years needed to read. 2,000 units. Sheridan solved it. Sheridan's solution. The League of Non-Aligned Worlds, Sheridan said in the conference room at week 4. Every member species has a representative on Babylon 5. Every representative has a ship. Every ship can carry interface units. He paused. We don't distribute to the world. We distribute it to the representatives. They take it home. They install it. They connect to the network. He paused. And then they distribute from there. McKay looked at him. That's actually how the ancient gate network worked, McKay said. Not technically. The gates were direct physical transit, not information distribution. But the principle, he paused. Each node serves its local region and connects to the whole. The ancients built the gate network as infrastructure, Sheppard said. This is the same thing. Information infrastructure. The shadows seeded conflict by limiting what species knew about each other, Ivanova said. She had been in the conference room for every major planning session. The specific presence of someone who understood that her role was to make sure the plan that emerged was implementable and who asked the questions that produced implementable plans. Misunderstandings engineered into wars. If the library distributes, if every species has access to every other species' history, their challenges, their choices, the specific mechanism the shadows used stops working, Teyla said. Yes, Sheridan said. The room was quiet, with the specific quality of people recognizing something that was true and large simultaneously. Draal, McKay said into the comm. The fabrication systems can increase output to 60 units per day, Draal said. I anticipated the distribution question and have been preparing accordingly. Of course you have, McKay said. The great machine has had 10 million years to develop patience, Draal said, and a certain capacity for forward planning. The first users. The Narn ambassador came to Atlantis in week 5. G'Kar, the specific bearing of a man who had seen his world bombed into submission by the Centauri, and who had spent 4 years rebuilding his people's capacity to fight back, and who had never in 4 years encountered anything like what Sheridan had been describing to the League representatives for the last 3 weeks. He came with the specific quality of a man who did not trust easily and who was coming anyway, because the Narn had lost too much to refuse things that might help on the grounds that they seemed too good to be possible. Sheppard met him at the East Pier. G'Kar stepped onto Atlantis and looked at the ancient architecture around him and said nothing for 41 seconds. Then he said, "It's real." "Yes," Sheppard said. "The terraforming protocol," G'Kar said, "for Narn's biosphere," Ambassador Sheridan described it. He said the ancient database contained a method for recovering a planet's biosphere after bombardment damage. He paused. Narn's biosphere has been damaged for 4 years. Our soil composition, our atmosphere, our water table. He paused. Do you understand what it means for my people if this is real and works? Haufer. Sheppard looked at him. Tell me, Sheppard said. Not because he didn't understand, he understood, had read the Narn situation in Sheridan's briefings, and had understood the specific weight of it. He asked because G'Kar needed to say it, and the saying of it mattered. G'Kar looked at the ocean. It means, he said, that we can go home, not to survive in a damaged world, home to the world we had. He paused. The Centauri took our world from us. Your database can give it back. He paused. That is not a small thing, Colonel Sheppard. No, Sheppard said. It's not. G'Kar looked at the city. Show me, he said. Sheppard showed him. McKay spent 4 hours with G'Kar in the database room, not demonstrating, not presenting, but the specific quality of 2 technically capable people working a problem together. McKay's ancient database expertise, and G-Car's intimate knowledge of Narn's specific biosphere damage, combining into the specific, productive friction of collaboration between people who approached problems differently, and were better for the combination. By the end of the 4 hours, they had a complete implementation plan. G'Kar left with an interface unit and a data pad containing the full terraforming protocol and the specific quality of a man who had arrived doubting and was leaving certain. At the East Pier, before boarding his shuttle, he looked at Sheppard. "The ancient people who built this city," he said. "Where are they now?" Sheppard looked at the city. "Somewhere that's hard to explain," he said, "but present, paying attention." G'Kar absorbed this. "Tell them," he said, "that the Narn are grateful." Sheppard looked at the dimensional boundary channel relay on the East Pier housing the 17-point network, running at full capacity, the connection to the space between spaces where something ancient and ascended had been watching a flying city build a library. "I think they heard you," he said. Week 7. The library went live on the first day of Week 7. Not with ceremony. McKay had been asked about ceremony and had said that the library going live was a technical event, not a ceremonial one. And that ceremony could happen after the technical validation was complete, and not before, because he was not going to have the most significant information distribution system in the known galaxy's history go live in front of an audience. If there was any possibility of a technical fault producing an embarrassing outcome in front of that audience. The technical validation completed at 0847. The library went live at 0848. By 0900, 14 League worlds had connected. By 1241, by the end of the day, 87 species had interface units active and were accessing the network. The specific accumulated weight of 87 civilizations connecting to 10,000 years of ancient knowledge and 10 million years of con. The great machines archive simultaneously, the dimensional boundary channel running the specific steady quality of a distribution system that was doing exactly what it had been built to do. McKay watched the connection count climb and said nothing. Sheppard watched McKay watch the connection count and said nothing. At 1,347, the connection count passed 100. McKay made a sound that was not a word. "Yeah," Sheppard said. "I wasn't," McKay said. "I'm not." He stopped. He looked at the screen. "The Hoffen record," he said. "Species number 73. To connect the Streeb, they accessed the Hoffen record within the first 4 minutes. They're currently facing a viral outbreak that their medical technology can't address, and they were looking for treatment protocols. And the search algorithm surfaced the Hoffen record alongside the treatment database because the Hoffen record contains the specific wrong answer documentation that is relevant to a species facing a similar choice." He paused. They read the treatment protocols, and then they read the Hoffen record. And then the Stribe representative on Babylon 5 sent a message to Sheridan saying that their council had been considering a biological modification to make their species resistant to the virus, and they had just read what that choice cost the Hoffens and they are reconsidering. Sheppard looked at the screen. "The library worked," he said. "The library worked," McKay said. "The Dimensional Boundary Week 7 Day 4. It happened on a Tuesday." Not planned significant things in Sheppard's experience rarely were. He was in the ZPM room, running a routine maintenance check on the Dimensional Boundary Tap interface when the channel opened. Not a transmission from the Shadow Network. Not a relay from the isolated vessel, which had been stationary in the system for 7 weeks, receiving the library's output through the Dimensional Boundary Channel. Its own propagation into the Shadow Network continuing at the biological pace of something spreading through an organism larger than any single mind could fully conceive. The channel opened from the other side. The specific quality of a connection initiated from the dimensional boundary itself, not from a location in normal space using the channel, but from the space between spaces. The specific dimensional address that McKay's interface hardware had been treating as the channel's terminus rather than its source. Something on the other side was initiating. McKay saw it on his console. "Sheppard," he said. "I see it," Sheppard said. The channel carried something that was not words, the same register as the original ancient signal, older than language, operating below the translator's algorithms, but different from the original signal in the specific quality of its presence. The original signal had been a message, a recorded transmission. This was live. Something was on the other side of the dimensional boundary, and it was present in the specific quality of presence rather than transmission. Not a message sent across time and space, but something there, now, aware of the channel being open and choosing to be present through it. McKay's translation architecture ran for 8.3 seconds. Then it produced something. McKay read it. His hand stopped moving over the console. "McKay," Sheppard said. McKay turned around. His face had the specific quality that Sheppard had seen twice in 2 years. Once when he had solved the ZPM recharge problem. Once when the 47th record was acknowledged. The specific quality of a man encountering something that exceeded every framework he had, and finding that the exceeding was not frightening. It was the word McKay would use later in his report, because he had decided that the report required precision, even when precision was insufficient. It was correct. "They're here," McKay said. Sheppard looked at the channel. "The ancients," he said. "Not a message," McKay said. "Not a relay. Not a signal through a shadow vessel." He paused. "Present. Here. Now." He paused. Again. "The translation is, I want to be precise. The translation is imprecise because the register is pre-linguistic, and the translation architecture is doing its best with something that isn't quite language yet. But the meaning is," he looked at the screen. "The meaning is clear." "What does it say?" Sheppard said. McKay looked at the screen. At the dimensional boundary channel, reading the specific live presence of something ancient and ascended, present through the space between spaces, attending to a ZPM room in a flying city in the wrong universe, where 2 humans were standing next to the most significant information distribution system in the known galaxy's history. "It says," McKay said, "you built what we hoped for. We wanted to say so directly. We have been waiting for the right moment." He paused, and then he paused again. "And then it says something that the translation architecture is having difficulty with. The components are clear, but the specific formulation." He read it again. "It says, the city was always meant to come here. We did not send it. We do not have that capability from where we are. But we knew it would come. We built it, knowing it would come. We built everything we knew into it, because we knew that whoever found it would need everything." He stopped. "We built it for you. Not for you specifically, for whoever you turned out to be. We hoped you would turn out to be this." The ZPM room was completely still. Sheppard looked at the channel. At the city around him, full power. Library live. 100. Plus species connected. The shadow network, feeling a frequency it had forgotten. The Narn terraforming protocol, on its way home with Gakar. At McKay. "Ask them," Sheppard said. "If they're staying." McKay found the ancient formulation. He transmitted it. The response came in 1.3 seconds. "For now," McKay read, "there is more to do from where we are, but we will not be as absent as we were." He paused. "The library will carry what we cannot carry directly. That is enough. That is what we built it for." Sheppard looked at the channel. "Tell them," he said, "that we'll keep building." McKay transmitted it. The channel was open for 4.3 more seconds. Then it closed. Not gone, not severed. The specific quality of a connection that had been made and remained available rather than one that had ended. The ZPM held its 100%. The dimensional boundary tap ran its steady feed. The library served its 100 plus connections. The shadow network carried its returning frequency through its biological architecture at the pace of something 900 million years old, learning something new, which was slow and real and sufficient. Sheppard sat on the floor of the ZPM room with his back against the housing. McKay sat beside him. They didn't speak for 6 minutes. Then McKay said, "We need to go home eventually." "Yeah," Sheppard said. "The Stargate is at full power," McKay said. "The dimensional corridor can be reopened. I've had the calculations done since week 2. He paused. "Whenever you say." Sheppard looked at the ceiling, the ancient architecture, the city, the 10,000 years of intention above him. "Not yet," he said. "No," McKay said. "Not yet." A pause. "The Drazi-Brakiri dispute," McKay said. Sheppard looked at him. "You put it on your list," McKay said. 3 weeks ago, I looked at the ancient diplomatic protocols database." He paused. "There's a mediation framework that addresses exactly their specific resource allocation conflict. It takes 2 days to implement. I can have it ready tomorrow." Long. Sheppard looked at the channel reading. "At the library connection, count 103 now, climbing." "Do it," he said. "Already done," McKay said. "I did it last week. I was waiting for you to ask." Sheppard looked at him. "You're insufferable," Sheppard said. "Yes," McKay said, "but I'm right." "Yeah," Sheppard said. "You are." The city hummed around them, full power. The library is live. The work continues. 100%. 103 connections. The ancients, present. The frequency, returning. The library, open. The work, never finished. But the building, begun. They stayed for 11 weeks. Not 7. The library had gone live at 7, and the work had not stopped at 7. The specific quality of a project that reaches its primary objective and reveals, in the reaching, the secondary objectives that the primary objective made possible. 4 more weeks of connection installations, of Jakar's terraforming protocol being implemented on Narn, with the specific patient quality of a planet beginning to remember what it was, of the Stribe medical crisis resolving with the ancient antiviral architecture and without the Hoffen choice, of the shadow network's returning frequency propagating through its biological architecture at the pace of something very old, learning something new. 4 more weeks of Ronon standing the north perimeter every morning and saying clear, of Garibaldi standing it every evening and filing 3-sentence reports. Teyla in the database room, with Ivanova finding things the specific, accumulated weight of 2 people from completely different universes, discovering that the ancient database contained enough to work on together for years, choosing to work on the most immediately useful things first and making a list of the rest. Sheridan and Sheppard on the East Pier at irregular hours, having the specific conversations of 2 commanding officers who had found, in 11 weeks of impossible circumstances, the particular quality of mutual recognition that came from people who approached the same problems from different angles and arrived at compatible conclusions. "You should come back," Sheridan said. On the last evening, the alien sun going down over the alien ocean, the city behind them at full power, the library serving 147 connections. "The corridor works both ways," Sheppard said. "Does it?" Sheridan said. "Theoretically," Sheppard said. McKay has been very precise theoretically. "What does it theoretically mean for McKay?" Sheridan said. "It means he's 94% certain and is managing his own expectations," Sheppard said. Sheridan looked at the ocean. 94%, he said. From McKay, Sheppard said. "That's essentially a guarantee." Sheridan was quiet for a moment. "The shadow network," he said. "The frequency propagation. Draal's projections. How long?" "Complete propagation through the full network," Sheppard said. "Years, maybe a decade. Biology moves at its own pace." He paused. "But the direction is set. The frequency is in the network, and it doesn't leave once it's there. It propagates until it reaches everything." He paused. The war doesn't end tomorrow. But the ending is in the network, moving. And the Vorlons? Sheridan said. Sheppard thought about Kosh. About the specific thing Kosh had said on the pier, we forgot too, with the specific quality of a million-year-old being arriving at an honest assessment of its own failure. I think the Vorlons are going to have a harder time than the Shadows, Sheppard said. Sheridan looked at him. The Shadows forgot a question, Sheppard said. The Vorlons remember theirs, but they answered it wrong for 1,000,000 years, and they know it. That's... He paused. In my experience, that's harder. Knowing you had the right question and still got it wrong. He paused. But Kosh is working on it. I think Kosh has been working on it for longer than he said. Sheridan looked at the station above Babylon 5, its running lights in the alien sky, the last best hope for peace still occupying its orbit and doing its work. You changed things, Sheridan said. You know that. The database changed things, Sheppard said. No, Sheridan said. The database was the tool. You changed things. He paused. The ancients built the city. They put the knowledge in it. They waited 4,000,000 years for it to be found. And then it was found by a team that had been making the impossible work for 2 years, and that showed up in my universe with 4% power and the specific stubbornness of people who don't accept not survivable as a terminal. Conclusion. He paused. The ancients built the tool. You used it. Sheppard looked at the ocean. 60 drones helped, he said. Sheridan made the specific sound of a man who had been fighting the Shadow War for 4 years and had just been reminded that 60 ancient drones dealing with a shadow vessel at 0400 on a Thursday morning was the moment things had started to change. Yes, he said. They did. The morning. Departure day was Tuesday. McKay announced this at 700 inches of the conference room with the specific quality of a man who had checked the calculation 17 times and was announcing it rather than suggesting it, because the calculation was complete and the window was optimal, and the decision had already been made. The dimensional corridor window opens at 1,400, he said. It stays open for approximately 40 minutes. The transit will take 4.3 seconds from our perspective, consistent with the arrival transit duration. We will exit in Pegasus space at the coordinates of the original uncontrolled fold event, approximately 300,000 kilometers from Atlantis's last known position in our universe. He paused. At which point we re-establish contact with the SGC and explain where we've been. How do we explain where we've been? Ronon said. McKay looked at him. Honestly, Teyla said. Ronon considered this. They're going to have questions, he said. Many, McKay said. I have prepared a 340-page preliminary report. He paused. It is not complete. It is preliminary. The full report will take considerably longer. How long? Sheppard said. I have estimated, McKay said, 14 months for a comprehensive account of everything that occurred in 11 weeks. He paused. The library alone requires. McKay, Sheppard said. Right, McKay said. 1,400, East Pier. Don't be late. What was left behind? The library interface remained. Not just the network, the physical interface hardware on Atlantis's hull, the 17 relay points, the dimensional boundary channel distribution system. McKay had built it into the city's permanent architecture during Week 3, when it had become clear that the library was not a temporary installation, but a permanent one. The hardware was ancient in specification, built by the Great Machine's fabrication systems, integrated with Atlantis's power architecture. When Atlantis left, the library would leave with it. The distribution nodes it had seeded across 147 worlds would remain, each interface unit a permanent connection point, each one capable of accessing the network through the dimensional boundary channel, regardless of Atlantis's physical location in any universe. The library did not require Atlantis to be present to function. It required the dimensional boundary channel. The channel was the boundary itself, permanent, everywhere, the specific condition of the universe that did not require a city to maintain it. McKay had verified this 6 times. The library would keep running. The 147 connections would hold. The Narn terraforming protocol would continue its work. The Stribe medical crisis would continue its resolution. The shadow network's returning frequency would continue its propagation. The Great Machine would continue its archive. Draal would continue his 10 million year tenure, with the specific addition of a dimensional boundary channel link to an ancient city in another universe, and the complete ancient database accessible through it. The work would continue. Without them, as it should, goodbyes. Sheppard's goodbye to Sheridan was brief. Not because there was little to say, because there was too much to say, and 11 weeks had already said most of it, and what remained was the specific quality of 2 people who had worked well together, acknowledging that the work had been good. Sheridan extended his hand. Sheppard shook it. "The corridor," Sheridan said. "If it works both ways." "When it works both ways," Sheppard said. "When?" Sheridan said. "Send McKay first, with coffee. He drinks the station dry. In 3 days, every time he's here." "I'll send him with a care package," Sheppard said. Sheridan looked at the city one last time. The towers, the piers, the alien ocean around it, the ancient architecture holding its 10,000-year quality in a universe it had not been built for and had made its own. "Tell the ancients," Sheridan said, "that we're grateful if you talk to them again." "The channel's permanent," Sheppard said. "They're listening." Sheridan looked at the dimensional boundary channel relay on the pier housing. "Good," he said. He paused. "I have things to say to them." Ronon's goodbye to Garibaldi was 1 sentence. "North perimeter," Ronon said. "Cover it." Garibaldi looked at him. "You're not going to be here," Garibaldi said. "No," Ronon said. "Cover it anyway." Garibaldi looked at the north perimeter, the alien morning, the pier, the ocean. "Yeah," he said. "I will." They did not shake hands. They did not need to. Teyla's goodbye to Ivanova was the longest. Not because they were close in the specific way of people who had known each other for years. 11 weeks was not years. But because they had spent 11 weeks in the database room, finding things together, and the finding had produced the specific quality of 2 people who understood that what they had built between them was real, regardless of its duration. Ivanova handed Teyla a data chip. "The Minbari have a ceremony," Ivanova said, "for departures. I asked Lenier to help me write a version of it. It's on the chip." She paused. "It's for when you get home, for the people you left behind, the people in Pegasus who kept fighting while you were here." She paused. "They deserve a ceremony." Teyla looked at the chip. "Thank you," she said. Not the formal quality of diplomatic gratitude. The specific, simple quality of a person receiving something that mattered and saying so directly. Ivanova looked at her. "The database," Ivanova said. "The Athosian records you added in week 9. Your people's history, your oral traditions, the specific anthropological record of a people who survived the wraith cullings for 10,000 years." She paused. "I read them. All of them." She paused. "Your people are in the library. Every species that connects will have access to who the Athosians are and what they endured and what they built." She paused. "I thought you should know." Teyla was quiet for 2.1 seconds. "The ancients documented the Athosians," she said, "in their database. I knew that." She paused. "But this is different. This is my people, speaking for themselves." "In the library," she looked at Ivanova. "That is a different thing." "Yes," Ivanova said. "It is." McKay's goodbye to Draal was through the comm, the interface hardware. McKay said, "The fabrication specifications are in the library, accessible to any species with the technical capability to build it. If there are redundancy failures in the distribution nodes," "Dr. McKay," Draal said, "the power draw on the dimensional boundary tap needs to be monitored at..." "Dr. McKay," Draal said again. McKay stopped. The machine has been running for 10 million years, Draal said. It was running before I merged with it. It will run after many things that currently seem permanent have changed. A pause. Those. I will watch the library. I will maintain the distribution nodes. I will monitor the power draw. Another pause. What you built is good work. The machine agrees. Another pause. The specific quality of a planetary intelligence that had been waiting for 10 million years for something worth building and had found it. Go home, Doctor. McKay looked at the comm. Right, he said. Yes, he paused. Thank you for the fabrication systems and the machine's archive and the Dr. McKay, Draal said. Yes, McKay said. Go home, Draal said. 1,400. The corridor opened at 1,400 exactly. Not the uncontrolled fold event of their arrival. This was McKay's work, precise and deliberate. The dimensional boundary tap providing the specific energy architecture that the corridor required. The ancient database's corridor mechanics translated into operational parameters that McKay had run through 17 validation cycles and was running through an 18th as the corridor opened. The event horizon in the air above the East Pier, not the gate's event horizon, not the familiar blue-white of a Stargate connection, but the specific dimensional quality of a corridor between universes, the boundary thinning at the point McKay had specified, and the other side visible as a shimmer that was not quite light and not quite space, and was the specific visual quality of somewhere else. Pegasus space. Their universe. Home. The city began to lift at 1,402, the specific controlled ascent of Atlantis, leaving a planetary ocean. The shields managing the water displacement. The ancient systems that had been built for exactly this purpose, doing exactly this purpose. Sheppard was in the chair. The city in his nervous system full power, complete capability, 100% ZPM running its permanent feed, every drone and every shield and every system at the configuration the ancients had intended. He felt the city's awareness as it lifted the specific quality of Atlantis leaving a place it had been. The city's consciousness registering the departure the way it had registered the arrival, with the specific 10,000-year patience of something that had done this before and knew how. He also felt something else. In the chair, connected to the city's full consciousness, he felt the dimensional boundary channel, all 17 relay points on the hull, all 147 connections to the library's distribution nodes, the living network that the city was carrying in its architecture, and would carry with it through the corridor, and would maintain from wherever it landed. He felt the library, and through the library, in the specific attenuated way of a connection that was present but distant. He felt the 147 worlds that had connected, felt their presence in the network, the way a nervous system felt its extremities, not clearly, not in detail, but there, present, connected. He felt the shadow network's returning frequency, slow, biological, the specific pace of something 900 million years old, learning something new. He felt the great machine below, Draal's merged consciousness steady and present and patient with the specific patience of 10 million years. And he felt the dimensional boundary itself, the channel, the space between spaces, the place where something ancient and ascended had been present and was still present, attending to a city lifting from an alien ocean and preparing to go home. The corridor was at full width at 1,407. 40 minutes remaining. McKay, Sheppard said, through the chair interface. His voice carries the specific quality of someone speaking from a larger space than a human body normally occupied. Ready, McKay said, from the ZPM room. Present through the city's systems, connected to the interface hardware, the corridor mechanics running exactly as the 18th validation cycle had confirmed they would run. Team, Sheppard said. Ready? Teyla said. Ready, Ronon said. The specific flat economy of a man who had said clear every morning for 11 weeks, and who was ready. Entering the corridor in 10 seconds, Sheppard said. He looked at the corridor through the city's consciousness, the shimmer of somewhere else. The specific quality of the boundary between universes thinned to the point of passage. Pegasus space visible through it the way the other side of a window was visible through glass. He looked at the alien ocean below the last of it, the city lifting clear of the water, the specific quality of departure. He looked at the station above Babylon 5, its running lights steady in the alien sky. Sheridan watching from somewhere on the station the way Sheppard would have watched from the pier if their positions were reversed. The dimensional boundary channel opened one more time, not initiated by McKay, not initiated from the other side of the corridor, from the boundary itself, from the space between spaces, from whatever was present there and had been present since the library went live, and before that, since Atlantis arrived, and before that, since the ancients built the channel into the city's architecture, because they had known this moment would come. The channel carried something. Not words, not even the pre-linguistic register that the translation architecture had been managing for 11 weeks. Something simpler, something that arrived directly as meaning, without requiring translation at all, the specific quality of communication that was below language and below the translator and below everything except the specific shared experience of beings that had faced ending and chosen building. The meaning was this: well done. Sheppard sat in the chair with the city's full consciousness in his nervous system and received it. He thought about the ancients who had built this city and put everything they knew into it, who had ascended to hold a question for 900 million years, who had built a message into the great machine's deep memory 10 million years ago and waited for a flying city to fall into the right universe at the right moment and open it. He thought about 11 weeks of a team that had arrived with 4% power and had built a library. He thought about 60 drones at 0400 on a Thursday. He thought about McKay in an access tunnel for 14 hours, and Ronon saying, "Clear every morning," and Teyla and Ivanova finding things, and Sheridan talking to a shadow vessel for 9 hours, and Gakar standing on the East Pier saying, "Is it real?" He thought about the 47th record, and the isolated shadow vessel's acknowledgement signal, and the frequency returning through a biological network at the pace of something 900 million years old, learning something new. Well done. He sent something back. Not words. He didn't have the ancient formulation, and it didn't matter. He conveyed the specific quality of a man who had been doing impossible things for 2 years and had learned in the doing that the impossible things were what they were there for. The specific quality of a team that had received a message from the ancients saying, "We hoped you would turn out to be this," and had turned out to be this. The specific quality of, "We'll keep building." The channel acknowledged it, and then the city went through the corridor. 4.3 seconds. Pegasus space. The specific quality of their own universe, the right stars, the right constants, the specific familiar quality of a galaxy that had been fighting the Wraith for 10,000 years and was still fighting, and that needed what Atlantis carried. The corridor closed behind them. McKay's voice, from the ZPM room, carried the specific quality of a man whose 18th validation cycle had been correct. Transit complete. All systems are nominal. ZPM at 100%. The library connections are a pause. 147 connections are still active. The dimensional boundary channel is maintained across the transit. The library is live. Another pause. Longer. We're home. Sheppard came out of the chair. He stood in the gate room, the specific familiar quality of Atlantis's gate room, the gate itself, the architecture that had been home for 2 years, and that was home again. He looked at the gate, at the team around him, at the ZPM reading that had been 4% when they arrived in the wrong universe and was 100% now and would stay there. At the library connection, count 147, holding the dimensional boundary channel, maintaining its distribution across universes as the ancient physics allowed. The library, serving its 147 worlds from a city in Pegasus space, the way it had served them from a city in an alien ocean. At the datapad, in McKay's hand, the 340-page preliminary report, the beginning of 14 months of comprehensive accounting. At Teyla, who had the data chip Ivanova had given her and was holding it with the specific quality of someone who had been given something important and knew it. Ronon, who was looking at the gate with the expression of a man who was home and knew what home meant because he had spent 7 years without it. McKay, Sheppard said. Yes, McKay said. Dial the SGC, Sheppard said. Already dialing, McKay said. The gate activated. The event horizon was established. The specific blue-white of a Stargate connection, their gate, their network, their universe. Home. Sheppard looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at the dimensional boundary channel relay on the ZPM room housing the connection to the library, to 147 worlds, to the Great Machine, to Draal, to the space between spaces where something ancient and ascended was present and attending. Kosh, he said, not into a comm to the channel, to the boundary, to the specific quality of a presence that was not limited by physical location. The channel registered something, not words, not the pre-linguistic register. The specific quality of attention, of something present, acknowledging that it had heard its name. We'll be back, Sheppard said. The channel held its quality for 1.3 seconds. Then it registered something that the translation architecture processed as the closest available linguistic equivalent to a concept that did not have a direct human translation, the specific ancient formulation that meant, simultaneously I know and I am glad, and the work continues. Sheppard walked through the gate. The team followed. The city held its full power quality in Pegasus space, the library live, the connections active, the dimensional boundary channel running its steady, permanent feed between universes, the work continuing in the specific, patient way of things built to last. Atlantis held its ocean. The gate closed. The library kept running. 100%. 147 connections. The frequency returning. The work never finished. The building never stopped. The city holding home.